No. We're good? All right. Welcome, everyone, to the afternoon session. This is Up to the Challenge. And apparently, not very many of you are up to the challenge since the room is almost empty. You guys got scared away. I am late. I do apologize. I am going to point the finger, though, at the fourth bowl of the eclair cake. It's not my fault. Okay. Actually, I need to repent. I had made a vow, it was either this morning or yesterday, that I was going to stop eating the bread and all the desserts, and then they brought out the eclair cake. I had a weak moment 4 times. Okay, no. No, I only had 2 bowls. I really only had 2. That stuff was good, though, wasn't it? Okay, warning to those who want to come to our next Sukkot at this property. Go on a diet first. Get real skinny, because you're going to, I've gained like 8 pounds, I think, since I've been here. Crazy good. Okay. You're thinking, I thought we were doing Up to the Challenge. I'm just stalling for people to come in from outside. Give me a little bit of a stall tactic. Marty, can we get the TV on so I can see the time? Screensaver's on, but it's not set for time. Okay, thank you. Okay. Now I think we're ready. We still have more people coming in the back. I'll tell you what the challenge was, eating lunch and getting here on time. I tried to make it a little bit of a tighter window because I wanted more time to do stuff, but I think we might need to spend more, might have to extend it like 30 minutes next time. Give lunch a little bit longer window. An hour and a half wasn't enough. And I really know it's not the eating part. It's you guys, and I'm not picking on you, I think it's a great thing. You guys are enjoying each other. And you're talking and everything else, and it's like one bite, 60 or 70 words, one bite, another 150 words, another bite. I know how that works. Okay. I think we're about getting everybody settled in here. Okay, so this is going to be part 2 of our sort of teaching that we're calling Up to the Challenge. Actually, Up to the Challenge is all of these teachings that we're doing for the idea of if we can understand ourselves better, we can understand others better. And we're specifically looking here at sort of the core situation, which is, understanding, well, the premise was that we need to understand what Yahweh meant when he made man and when he made woman. But what we've been talking about and we'll continue to talk about is not so much what he had in mind, because I think most of us have somewhat of an idea. And we'll talk about those things at some point. There's lots of teachings out there about that. But what causes our struggle with it, though? What makes it so hard for us to be what he wanted us to be? We delved into that a little bit on Sunday, on Friday when we started. Today's Sunday. See what happens when you're here too long? And we talked about understanding the struggle and understanding that there's brokenness, there's damage, and I could see all you weird people came back for a second session, because I called you all weird last time too, right? Okay, and, we get trapped in this sort of state that we're in of being affected by people and culture and society and all kinds of other issues. And so ultimately the idea is to get us to make a decision at some point and a commitment regarding moving forward, in our lives. Okay, now, so what we want to do today, as we go into this, and I need my phone because I thought of a few things and put in my notes on my phone. Let me just see if I can pull that up. Okay, I think there's 2 things on here. Okay, so first of all, I want to start off with, I want to get off to the right start by telling you there is something wrong with you. There is something wrong with you, but there's something wrong with everybody. And if you knew that going into all relationships, you probably might have a little bit more compassion because you quickly identify there's something wrong with him or her. But they're doing the same thing, looking at you. Okay, so there is something wrong with us. And I want to talk about one of the areas that is definitely very wrong with us. And this is an area that has to do with our biggest problem, which I think is being triggered or auto responses. Anybody have a problem with people pushing your buttons? Okay. Anybody have no problem at all pushing others' buttons? Yeah, we do that purposely sometimes, don't we? Okay. But it's that automatic response and the triggered response. And what I mean by that is these are the responses that you have that once it starts, you really are on autopilot. You are not in control. I knew that I could get the same yelling speech out of my father that I want anytime I wanted. Just push that button, I get the same exact word for word. I could repeat it for him. You guys know that with your spouses, you know with your parents, you know whatever. Your children know it with you. And so this brings up the issue that I want to really talk about, which is the idea of being in control, being controlled, or being out of control. All right? So I want to define these terms for you the way I'm using them today in this. I've got to figure out how I can position it so I can see it and the microphone's not blocking me. This is why we should be wearing a headset, but I hate to do that, so I'm going to do it this way. All right. Control. These are my definitions, and so you understand what I mean when I use the words, okay? When you are in control, you may want to write this down, this is important. When you are in control, you have complete freedom of choice. When you are in control, you have complete. In other words, no option is not available to you. Okay? When you are in control, you have complete freedom of choice. So think about it. What I just talked about, those triggered things, you are not in control at that moment because you're controlled by the triggered response. You're controlled by an emotional thing. You're controlled by a habit, by a whatever. You're being controlled at that moment. Okay? Because if you had freedom of choice, you might just choose to not respond the way you do, but you're out of control at that point. But you're not out of control as I'm going to define it. You're under something's control. You're just not the one in control. Okay? So controlled is when someone else has influence over your choices. Okay? When someone else has influence over your choices. So when you are being controlled, you have limited to no freedom of choice. Just trying to read my notes. I'm not used to reading notes. Okay, when you are being controlled, you have limited to no freedom of choice. You may or may not know that you are being controlled or by who or what. See, we talked about this a little bit in the first part when I talked about that you shouldn't have to, and it's a bad habit to get into, to relive a horrible thing more than once. Because you've given control to that situation or that person beyond when the event happened. They're controlling your emotional state. They're not literally there controlling it, but you've allowed that thing to control you, to affect it limits your choices. You feel like you can or can't do something only within the parameters of that emotional state. Does that make sense? We're clear on that. When you're in control, you have complete freedom of choice. Complete. You can absolutely choose to do anything. No options are off the table. Okay? Now, bear in mind, I've said many times that you must be in that state to truly submit. Because now you are voluntarily offering up control. Most of the things that control you, you never gave them permission. You didn't agree to that stuff. You didn't sit there and go, I now agree to have the rest of my life screwed up and hampered and limited because of this terrible thing that happened. Or because somebody spoke something into my life over and over again and I believed them. But when you have complete freedom of choice, you can actually submit yourself. Which is why I know I keep talking about over and over the idea of getting off the self-sovereign throne. And I've said this a couple of times recently, so some of you have heard me say it. I'm going to put a caveat to that. I'm not going to undermine it or disagree. I'm going to say you must get full sovereignty first. Okay? To be able to submit, you must have total freedom of choice. You must be in control. Okay, but most of you are in a controlled state. Okay, you're not out of control. You're in a controlled state. Society has controlled you or put thoughts in your heads that limit you in your terms of your choices. Your culture, your parents, your bosses, your relationships, your experiences, all of these things have become limiters to your choices. All right? I'll give you an example of that. For example, when I did the teaching on divorce, remarriage, and putting away, there are so many people that have watched that teaching that contact me to argue and fight because they're still controlled by the church and others that beat into them that one different understanding than what I said. And it controls them so much that they actually miss half of what I said. This is why they're able to say, well, what about here in Matthew where it says? And I'm like, I know I covered that, 30 minutes of it. But they're so under control they couldn't receive. In other words, it limited their ability. Remember choices, right? You have freedom of choice. It limited their choice to listen, to receive, to hear, to evaluate, because the decision was already a moot point. They already knew what they already knew. They were just trying to see if I agreed with them. They didn't have the freedom to say, I wonder if I'm right on this. I'm open to hearing something where I could be wrong. See, a lot of you say, I just want the truth. A lot of you just want the endorsement that what you think of truth is truth. You know what I'm saying? So it's not that you just want the truth. You want that what you believe to be already the truth to a large degree. Because then I share the truth with some people and they start arguing and fighting. And, well, you said you wanted it. Oh, but I don't think you have the truth now. Well, okay, whatever. All right? So again, control is when you are in control. You have complete freedom of choice. And controlled is when someone else or something else has influence over your choices. Okay, you are limited to no freedom of choice. And you may or may not know at that point, just it's important, you may not always know what it is consciously that is controlling you. Now, we can talk you through this in counsel and dig down to figure out what's controlling you. Think about the whole battle of Scripture. What is it? Fear and doubt versus trust and belief. Some of you are controlled by fear. Some of you are controlled by doubt. Well, I don't think I can do this. Well, why not? Well, because people have always told me I can't do it. These influences have limited your choice. Oh, but I'm handicapped. Oh, but I'm tall, I'm short, I'm fat, I'm skinny, I'm old, I'm young, I'm this, I'm that. I'm male, I'm female. So what? Everything that you're going to say, somebody who has that same problem has done it. Because they weren't limited by their choice. Okay, or limited in their choices. There was not a control that said you can't do this. All right? A great example of this is when the first person to break the 4-minute mile was what was it? How many minutes was the breakers on that? What's the record? The 4-minute, right? When they went the 4-minute mile, they were told, okay, with this record before there were people that got close to it, but they were told if you broke the 4-minute mile, your heart would explode. Do you think that's a limiting thought? They were told that the body can't break 4 minutes. It will damage your body. The 4-minute mile. Do you know the day within weeks of the day that the person broke that, 3 or 4 other people broke it who had already been running races and everything? Because in their mind they realized, it can be done and not die. The person who broke it just didn't believe the people who said it couldn't be done. Okay? And so those are 2 of them. Now the third one is called out of control. When you're out of control, this is when you recognize that you are not fully in control in some area or areas of your life, and you don't see what or who is actually in control. In other words, when you're out of control, you are probably lashing out in every direction and trying to fight against everything that feels like control. You're just let loose in all directions. Because you may think that you're in control when you choose a conservative path or a safe way and you choose to give up on a dream or some other thing. That's not so much an out of control. People that are out of control, you see them, you know they're out of control. They are unrestrained. They are just exploding in every direction, freaking out. There are no controls. You, outside force, is nothing. Okay, your body and your system and your mind and your heart, your emotions are just lashing out against control. Of course, at that point, you're controlled by another emotion. but you think that you are just lashing out against anything that feels like control, okay? Some of you with the white personality understand that, because the last thing you want to do is be under anybody's control. Anything that feels like control, not interested, if you have that personality, okay? Don't give them strict deadlines. Don't put them under pressure to get something done at a certain time. I'll do it. I'll get it done my way and my timing. Leave me alone, all right? Because they have a personality style that's actually against feeling like control. But guess what? They're controlled by something that makes them do that, because they've lost the option to be able to take things and do it on time and be scheduled. Because instead they allow it to cause anxiety and distress and all these other things. So these things are controlling your choices. Now, I'm not picking on you for that. We all have these problems. They're not the same for everybody. What controls you doesn't control the person next to you, necessarily the person next to them. Everybody's got some of you may have some similar control issues. And by the way, the reverse of this is that we feel like when we have, at some point you tend to recognize that you don't have full freedom of choice. At some point you recognize that you're not really in control. And this frustrates you, so you tend to then do things to impose control. But instead of imposing it on you, you impose it on other people, because it makes you feel like you're in control. Or if you're doing it on you, it means like maybe you'll control. I know some of the ladies that do this. I'm not picking on you, but I think that's really for the guys to understand this. This is why some of your wives are out there shopping. Because sometimes the more their life is out of control, they feel like I can control things. When I go out there, go in a store, look at items, pick one I want, go and buy it, I have authority, I have control. And you think, yeah, but we don't have the budget for that. Well, then you need to work that through, but just understand maybe that's one of the reasons they do it. Because I've noticed in counseling that sometimes the person having that problem has really challenges with being themselves not in control. And so recognize if you feel like you have the husband or the wife, doesn't matter, or even a child that's always imposing themselves, they may have somewhere in their system recognition that they are lacking self-control, control over self. Okay, we think of self-control as just behavior and being able to, do appropriate behavior, appropriate situations. But I mean self-control from the point of being able to control yourself, having full freedom of choice and not necessarily imposing yourself on anybody else. Okay? We good so far? All right. When we are in control or being controlled, this is important, a concept that you have to grasp. When we are in control, meaning of ourselves with the freedom of choice, or when we're being controlled by others, you are actually, listen, we are always in a state of submission. See, some of you think, that my wife's not submissive, my whatever's not. If you're not submissive, well, actually, you're always submissive. You're always submissive to whoever we have allowed to have authority. If you allowed an event in your life that happened in your past to have authority, you're submissive to that. If you allow a person to control you, you're submissive to that. Anything that, when you have somebody push your button, you are submissive to that thing driving the reaction that's triggered. So when people talk about submission, actually we're all very submissive. The problem is that we're actually not in control enough to choose the one that, what we're going to submit to. Because it gets triggered automatically, because there's other elements that we've already offered or allowed to have control in our lives. You have to understand that you were created to have full, 100% freedom of choice in every situation and every moment. Well, my boss is making me work on Saturday. He can't. Well, my mother made me eat pork, or made me come to Christmas, or nobody makes you do anything. They will pressure you. They will try to strongly influence you. They will threaten and try to leverage you. Do you understand that if I brought a gun and put it to your head and told you to do something, you still don't have to do it? But you'll shoot me. You still have the choice. Look at the story of Hannah and her sons in 2 Maccabees. Right? The children, for those who don't know the story, the Romans, the Greeks, at this point, the Greeks had brought this woman and her sons, and they said, eat this pork. or we're going to skin you alive and boil you in oil. And that's not an exaggeration. That's what they said. And the first son said, no. And they did it to him. Then they went up to the next one. Well, he had no choice. No, he still had a choice. And every one of them, Hannah watched as they said, no. And they knew they weren't bluffing because they watched. But the freedom of choice is still there. Okay? And so you need to know that you really do have always, in all moments, we're not predestined, we're not controlled, we're not just, walking this through as like some weird joke or something. You are here, and this is the teaching, right, I did, right, to make decisions. Making decisions is the reason you exist. He put you on this planet to make choices. So therefore, you should understand and embrace that you have freedom to make choices. No one can make you do. But you don't understand. No. That's the voice of control somewhere in your system, lashing out against what I just said. If you're saying things like that in your system, you don't understand. You were created to have total freedom of choice. Okay? Now, you might say, well, what about Adam? They were told that they can't eat of a tree. But remember, they were only in relationship with the Creator, who expected to be treated with that respect. Now, notice he didn't put a fence around it initially. It was there, and they had the freedom to choose. He had just given them counsel. Of every tree you can eat, except for this one. If you eat it, it's your choice. You'll die. It's all he told them. So they had choice. They had freedom of choice. And they chose badly. So it's very important that we understand that we are submissive. True biblical submission comes from a place of total control with true freedom of choice to do or not do. This is why I tell, okay, this can be hard for you. If you have children that are still under 20, this can be a little bit tough. Actually, even if they're older too. If you've got children living in your house, at some point you need to recognize that you're forcing them to keep covenant. You're forcing them to show up on Shabbat. You're forcing them is actually not part of the plan. They need to do what you need to do. Show they have the power of choice. It will not score you any points. Okay, actually it won't score you or your child points. Let's say your child shows up on Judgment Day, so to speak. We use that picture. And the Creator says, I noticed that you kept the Shabbat all the time. And the child says, well, that's because my parents, Rabbi, all made me do it. That's not going to score any points for you for making him do it or them for doing it. Because Deuteronomy 8:2 has to play out. He wants to know whether it's in your heart to choose to do it. That's a hard one for you parents. But recognize that you have only limited control and you need to be shifting to the place of influence. I think I talked about that on Friday. Okay? And so again, true biblical submission, as is laid out in Scripture, is a voluntary choice. Because some people think, Rabbi just wants everybody to submit to him and do what he says. No, the opposite. I do not want to control your choices. I will speak from the microphone strongly and passionately so that you understand what I believe, and then everything else is completely up to you. People still come up to me, did you know so-and-so is doing this and so-and-so is doing that? And I'm like, so? I'm not like upset. I'm like, what do you want me to do? We want you to make them stop. Can't make them stop. If they're doing something that's contagious and causing a problem in the group, I could ask them to leave. I can't make them do anything. Well, I guess I could try, but it'd be no point. It undermines the whole reason we're here. Okay? So when people talk about, you're in a cult, you tell them, I don't think so. My group leader of this whole group thing, he wants us to have total freedom of choice. That's kind of the opposite of a cult. I'm just saying. But when you go to some of the other places you've been, a little sign that you've been in a cult? How they treat you when you leave. They start attacking you and throwing things at you and calling people up and stirring all things up. Only thing I ever mention when people leave is if they're actively trying to stir people up to leave, is to just let you know, hey, this is happening. You may not need to be interacting with them. Just think about it, what you're doing. And yet there's still people that do it. And if they talk to me, I'll just tell them I'm confused. I just don't get why you still interact with them. That's your choice. Okay? But there's freedom of choice. So let's talk about, what we see in some of the biblical examples. You can see, Sarah says that it was her pleasure and comfortable for her to call her husband Lord. Yeah, he was her husband, but it was her freedom of choice to see him that way. Okay? You can see the Nachash, the snake, and Adam and Chava. Well, they allowed something outside to control them. The lusts and the desire for knowledge, for self-sovereignty, the fruit looked good, and all these kind of things. And they allowed outside influence. Now, they had the freedom to choose. Just chose badly. So we can look at all kinds of biblical examples of choice. Look at Joseph's life. I mean, Joseph went through all of those trials with almost zero complaint. Now, he still was holding on to a problem with his brothers, and it took a little bit to recover from the pain and the hurt of being betrayed by his brothers. But he took all the rest of it with almost no complaint, But everywhere he went, instead of looking at, look at this terrible, awful thing, he did the best he could everywhere he was. Tried to be a blessing everywhere he was. Tried to make things work everywhere he was. Okay? How many of you would have done the same thing? Well, we got a wasp here somebody needs to get. Okay, so, how many of you would have acted like Joseph? You would have been sold into slavery, had a bad attitude, probably gotten beaten and just been never heard of again. But he tried to make the most of what he had. Now, remember, we talk about a little bit like people having limited ideas so they don't know how far they can go. And I said there are people in the same kind of condition. How many of you think that Joseph had any idea that he was going to go from being sold into slavery to being second in all of Egypt? There's no way. But a lot of you would have said, if you didn't know the story, if I would have said, here's a guy, his brothers hate him, they sell him into slavery, where do you think he ends up? I think he'll end up being second in command in Egypt. Just like those you think, oh yeah, of course I would have expected him to part the sea. They didn't see that as a possible option. But we have to have freedom of choice. You have to be open to possibilities. Okay? Controlled. So what influences are there that can make you, quote unquote, all right? What are the influences that can, quote unquote, make you do, feel, or think in a way that is not the way you would want to do, feel, or think? This is how we're going to start the therapy session, okay? You want to think about this. You want to analyze yourself. What are those things? Who and what has enough influence that can make you do, feel, or think a certain way that you really would rather not do, feel, or think? Because I know a lot of you will pop your cork, let's say, because somebody pushed your button, but then later you feel really bad because you popped your cork. And you wish you could have found a different way to respond. Or maybe your response was to cower and run off and hide instead of dealing with something. Or there's a million ways you could have responded that you go and say, I hate that I responded that way. And you start having a self-loathing thing going on. Why can't I respond differently? Why do I let that person irritate me so much? Why do I let that person scare me? Why do I let that person, intimidate me? Or it could be on what looks like the good side. Why do I let that person always get me into trouble because I think what they're doing is fun and I join them in the fun and it's not really the right thing we should be doing? The next thing, we're both in trouble, or worse, you just get in trouble and they get away with it. The old saying about, we used to tease kids with, I see you found your partner in crime, so to speak, right? My son and another person's son had that reputation for a while, probably still do, because they need to be separated in class. And some of you remember having friends like that in school where you needed to be separated because when the two of you were together, it was exponentially worse. because you guys brought out all of that not so necessarily, societally appropriate stuff. But you were influenced. One of you influenced the other, or in some way, both of you were influencing each other. So I want you to really think about that. I mean, we're not going to fix this in a group session, but I want you to really think about what or who are the influences out there in your life that have you feeling, and it's not just acting, feeling, I'm tired of that person always making me angry, or always making me sad, or always making me stressed, or always making me insecure, or always making me whatever. So stop letting it happen. But they won't stop. I didn't say they would stop. I said you stop it. Just stop receiving it that way. I mean, you have freedom of choice. Someone can get in your face. You can decide to laugh instead of getting offended and upset. You can decide to do anything. But you got to break the pattern in your mindset and in your heart. So part of what we're going to talk about at some point is disrupting that pattern of behavior. I watched Tony Robbins one time in a teaching he was doing on a video where a person came up to him and was like, well, blah, 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 and he had a glass of water in his hand and he just threw some of it in her face. And she looked at him like, what? He said, no, tell me what you were saying. Go ahead. And so she right back into it. Blah, 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 blah. More water. After like the second or third time, it broke the pattern. She started laughing. It interrupted that whole, because it took more time each time to get back into that place. Okay? So you want to find things to be pattern interrupters. Find ways that you can, when you know you're getting triggered, first of all, you're going to have to find ways to be aware. Because once you're triggered, you're like not thinking, you're not aware, you're just an autopilot. But if you can, sometimes the things that trigger you, though, you can see it coming. It builds, and then you get triggered. So it's more of a slow burn, and it starts accumulating. Well, if you're aware of it, find ways to interrupt that pattern, interrupt the flow of that build. So what are the influences? Well, your experience with and your interaction with others. Your family are huge influencers. Some of you are still greatly influenced by stuff your father did to you, your mother did to you, brothers or sisters. It doesn't have to be like abusive and sexual and all, or beating up or verbal. It's just you're influenced by sometimes them being idolized by you. Maybe you were impressed with them and they went off and did dumb things and you thought that was good because they seemed to work for them. So it's not always negative things overtly, but you might imitate them because you thought it was great. You were impressed. So family members are huge influencers in your life. And then, of course, we're talking about from the point of experiences as well as interaction. So it's not just them talking to you and influencing you, which happens often. I mean, there's a story that I've read in one of the, I've read and studied hundreds and hundreds of personal development books, videos, everything since I was 11 or 12, 15, something like that. I was way young, okay, in the 70s. And so one of them was a story about how this woman came home from work and her daughter was singing. Maybe she was 10. And the woman had just had this awful day. And the daughter's just, I have one of those. Never stops singing. Okay? And the mother is in this awful mood and she yells at the daughter, knock it off. You're an awful singer. I can't stand listening to you sing. Stop. Go to your room. You know that kids stopped singing forever because they thought, I'm awful and I upset my mother and I can't sing. And they owned that. Okay? I derailed that possibility. One time my son came to me many years ago and he said to me, does Brianna have to sing all the time? And I said, yes, she does. As a matter of fact, yes. I actually said it kind of laughing. I said, yes, as a matter of fact, she does. The joke in my house, and the kids can't hear this, but they're in the room and I can hear my daughter singing. And I always say to my wife, what's that noise? It's always going. It's like, But you have to understand how you react to things in a heated moment can really influence somebody. What damage are you doing to your kids? Just like your parents did to you, or siblings, or whoever had that influence. Okay? So what about friends? Boy, friends can be your worst enemies, really, because they're thinking they're helping you when they're really planting all kinds of seeds. They're the ones telling you you can't, as well as telling you you can. Sometimes they're telling you you can and things that you shouldn't. You can do that. It'll be okay. You'll get away with it, or it'll be fine. Don't worry about it. Employers, co-workers could be influencers. Spiritual leaders you've had in the past or present can possibly be influencers. Okay? I believe with every ounce of my being that I am teaching you the truth. That this is the best teaching you can find. I believe that not from an ego or pride. I appreciate that. Because otherwise, why would I be up here except to try to give you what I think is the best possible thing? However, that being said, you should not be just, not thinking about it. You need to choose and listen to what I'm saying. Or more importantly, before that, choose if you even should be listening to me. That's the vetting process. Is this guy part of that fivefold ministry thing? Is this an influencer I should be submitting to? Am I in control enough to make that choice? And so we have all of those things that go through family, friends, employers, co-workers, spiritual leaders, etc. Society has a huge influence. Your experiences within the context of the society you grew up in or that you currently live in or some combination of those really shape the way you see everything. See, a lot of your choices are limited by the way you see everything. Your world view, your life view, your relationship view will tend to limit your choices, okay? So think about, do you have a cultural and societal difference because maybe you grew up in another country, and that country is different than this country. And if you left this country and moved to another country, that country would be different than the one you came from here. And those things can mess with your view because it's different. And do you think like the new place you are or the old place you were or some combination? You have freedom of choice. That doesn't mean you have freedom of choice to break rules and stuff that the country has, but you have freedom of choice as far as the way you respond to society, to the culture, to those things that are happening around you. Okay? Happening around you. Give me 1 second. So I'm going to write something I want to say in a minute, but I want to finish first. All right, got it. Okay. What about your cultural experience? I kind of tied it in with society. But the culture, you could have if it's an ethnicity, that was easy. I'll say it again in Spanish. Okay, if it's an ethnicity problem, a religious problem, or whatever, you can have strong cultural influences, okay? And so that's what, when you come to a place like the U.S. or other countries that are very diverse, then you have pockets of these things or have assimilation, like integration problems because it's hard for people to integrate those cultural influences and have them work well with each other without overly imposing on each other, okay? Because if you came from some place or if you grew up in an area which is mostly a particular ethnic group or culture, you see things a certain way. You can't help but see it that way. And it doesn't matter which one. So I'm not going to name any of them. Okay? Which is why, in some ways, I can understand why it's comfortable to live in the, whatever your ethnicity is, area of town. Because after all, everybody else is like that. But also, you're not allowing yourself to experience and see other things, but you're also being heavily influenced and limited in how you can see things because you're stuck still in that ethnicity. But unfortunately, because of racism and cultural isms or whatever, where we are prejudiced in some way against something, it makes it very awkward to be outside of that. So we run to the comfort of everybody's like me. Okay? Well, we're all not supposed to be everybody's like me. We're supposed to be everybody's like him. Okay? So let's go from everybody's like me to everybody's like him. Where's Manny? Are you writing that one down? Okay. All right? We got to go from everybody's like me to everybody's like him. Then it doesn't matter what your culture was, what your race is or was. That's why I remember the whole Jew-Gentile thing, when it says it doesn't matter whether you're circumcised, uncircumcised, all come together by choice to be Israel. And what you were and what you look like and all that stuff makes no difference. It's completely irrelevant, even though there are people out there trying to make, huge issues of, well, everybody in Israel is white. No, everybody in Israel is black. No, everybody. Those two groups are way on the extremes. They can't both be right. No, the answer is they're both wrong. Okay? You got white supremacist Israelites on one side. You got black Hebrew Israelites on the other side. And they're both violently in their rhetoric wrong. But they're strongly trying to influence. They want everybody on their side anybody that's white to agree with them and anybody that's black to agree with them. Some of you've run into all of this stuff. It is ugly and it needs to be avoided. It's a horrible, horrible mindset. Yahweh is calling people. He's not calling dogs or cats or fish. He's calling people. He's not calling white people or black people or yellow people or green people. He's calling people. Okay? He's not calling smart ones or stupid ones or rich ones or poor ones. He's calling people. He's not calling healthy ones or handicapped ones. He's calling everybody of every possible flavor, combination, or something. That's what it's all about. Yet there are groups out there that want to influence you to think that it's much more specifically limited to something. It's only us. There are churches out there just like that. We are the true church. If I ever say that, somebody slap me. Okay? You know what? That limits who can be in it. That limits what he's doing. I'm not going to limit him in any way. We're hoping that we are embracing truth. I went to a church for a few minutes that they believed they were the true church. No argument. That was it. You couldn't argue. The problem is there's a bunch of them out there that say the same thing, so they can't all be the true church. We're the one true church. We have a genealogical chart that goes right back to Paul. This is almost what they claim, that there's an unbroken chain right back to the apostles. Now, there are influencers that you see throughout history that do track back in that way, but not to have one true, unique little group, one place that says, we've got it all right, we're the perfect one thing. Now, we formed MTOI to be a place where we're hoping to set an example of a better model. Not a new model, just we're trying to actually use the old model correctly. Okay, we're not coming up with a new genius plan. This is actually the original model, just being implemented, hopefully, in a better, more accurate way than has been done for most of the last 2,000 years. But it's the simplicity of the old model, all right? So, influencers. Okay, so what about, this is a huge one. Well, actually, before I get to this one, let me go to what I wrote in my notes. When you're talking about your experiences with people, family, friends, employers, spiritual leaders, society, culture, and all that kind of stuff, you need to embrace one absolute reality as part of your therapy. Okay? I want you to repeat after me. I never do that, but you're going to repeat after me. Nothing is personal. That's a fact. I don't care if I go over and spit in your face, it's not personal. In other words, it's not about you. Okay, don't receive it as personal. You don't have to take it personally. I got in your face, cursed you out, and spit on you. Forgive them, Father, they don't know what they're doing. But it feels, the visceral part of it, it feels personal. Well, they hurt my feelings. Well, you shouldn't have had them out for them to hurt. Pick them up, put them back in the bag. Well, they offended me. Well, then get the me out of there. There's nothing to offend. They offended me. All right, so me's the problem. Get me under control. Did that person offend you? Yes. Well, then the you is the problem. Get that out of there. A selfless person, we talked about this in developing the character of Yeshua. A selfless person cannot be offended because it takes self to be offended. You get the self out of there, there's no offense. So you don't have to worry about it from that point of view. So you got to realize that nothing is personal. It feels personal. Yeshua had the same thing. They were spitting on him, they were attacking him, and they were scourging him. But they weren't scourging him and attacking him. They were attacking what they thought he was or what he was symbolizing or what they thought he was doing. It wasn't personal. Because to be personal, they have to really have known him. Okay? Then you're thinking, well, I have some people that really know me, and then so when they do it as a personal, it's still not personal because they really don't know you. You don't even know you. You don't. Because a lot of you are really having a hard time walking in your own skin because you're still walking to try to impress somebody, please somebody, not offend somebody, not do something where somebody might correct your score. You're being influenced so much, you don't even know who you are. Some of you have started on a journey with counsel. In this case, it was me counseling some of you, where you are only now becoming you after 30 years, 40 years. Because before you were a daughter or a son, and you were so influenced, or a husband or a wife, and you were so influenced. I've had some people that have had some marriage issues, one or two or whatever marriages that they've had, and I said to them after the one that they were currently in that had just ended, I said, you need to not go and get married again for a few minutes. Learn to be comfortable being you, but not you in the context of. Because some of you only know how to be in the context of another person. Ladies. And so I would not recommend running into another relationship until you are able to. You can't give yourself to a man as a wife if you're out of control or you're being controlled. Because that means that you're actually not giving yourself. You're bringing a whole bunch of other stuff. That's the whole point of sort of the metaphor of the wedding feast of the Lamb, the bride and the bridegroom. You can't really sit there and give yourself when you're still married to something else, so to speak. Kind of an adulterous thing. If there are other influences in your life, but you're supposed to only be now being influenced by your husband, ladies, those other influences are going to wreck your marriage. Men, if you're still tied to your mother's apron strings, and believe me, this really does happen. I've got ladies coming to me where they are so offended and upset because their husbands will listen to their mothers more than them. This has got to stop. But that's the strength of that influence. So they really weren't able to give themselves to their wives because a lot of what's called themself was already under the influence of mom. Or if you're a lady, it was maybe under the influence of an ex-husband or a boyfriend or some other thing. Dad, whatever. I mean, somebody else has influence. And so therefore, you're not just getting them. You're getting them plus the influencers. But you know what? They don't tell you about all that. You know, they used to talk about, well, you know, because of the whole big deal with AIDS and everything else, you need to know all your potential partner's, history of his sexual activity or her sexual activity. I get why that was important. Of course, those are worldly people that were actually just out there doing what they were doing. But you know what? I don't know how you would go about this, but you need to understand that you are bringing, even if you can't figure out what they're bringing, the person that's coming to the marriage, you are bringing all your stuff. But then you're all upset about them bringing their stuff. But you come with, we call this baggage, right? But baggage we usually think about in terms of some of the junk that people have in terms of the thought processes, but think about it in terms of the influencers that gave you the thought processes. So when they marry you, they're marrying you and your influencers. The ones that now have control, that you're submitted to, even if you're not even aware of it. You think that might mess up a marriage or two? And you wonder why you struggle. You wonder why, people, one spouse may want to talk to me, the other spouse doesn't, because the other spouse is thinking that you're being too influenced by me, maybe. Or they don't want to be influenced by me because they haven't have their influencers in place. And even if you don't like those influencers, they're comfortable because you've had them your whole life, or at least a good chunk of it. I mean, a lot of you that came out of, some spiritist type of stuff, you know what it was like to have influencers in your life that you counted on to give you guidance, and now you have to let them go because you realize they're not the truth. They didn't do you any good. They said they were. They said they were keeping you safe. In the meantime, they were jacking up your life beyond recognition. Yes. Okay. So what about your past? Most of your problems are probably because of the level of influence that you have from your past. And not just your past in general, but especially the relationships you have. It is really hard to deal with people that you have a past with. Especially, for example, when you're, and this comes up in the trying to understand the fifth commandment. And really, this teaching, if I was doing it, would also tie in with the honor and shame thing to some degree, because we have to deal with that fifth commandment, the idea of honoring mother and father. I can't even tell you how many times I've spoken to people about, I don't know what to do with my, now these are people in their 30s, 40s, 50s. What do I do with my mother or my father in terms of their saying to me, well, you're not honoring me. Okay, obedience is not required for honor. It is only required for honor if that's what you have as part of the contract. So obedience is part of honor in covenant, but not all relationships are like that. You can show your parent respect without saying yes to everything that they say. You can respectfully say no. Now, in the covenant, you can't do that because your covenant is that you're not going to say no. So in case anybody is missing the point. But you don't have that contract with your parents. So when mom wants you to do this or dad wants you to do that, you can say no. Just be polite and respectful. And don't, see, this is where the influence comes in. People will call me up, well, mom, but she keeps saying to me that I'm not honoring her. You can listen to her, you can listen to me. You can listen to her, you can listen to what the scripture says. You can listen to her. I mean, you can, who are you going to allow to influence you? But you don't see you have a choice. Your choices have been limited because of the level of influence. And when I say you can listen to her, you can listen to me, that's not like what's wrong with you, you should be listening to me. It's like, well, which one are you going to do? You actually have a choice. But it doesn't feel like you have a choice. The influencers don't want to make you think or let you know that you have a choice. And I don't have a problem telling the influencers when they try that I have a choice. And that choice is you can go in a home. Well, I'll die in a home or I'll kill myself. Well, that's your choice. You're not going to guilt me and leverage me into anything. Because the older parents, they use that guilt leverage to every inch that they can. So take away the leverage. I've told some husbands and wives, okay, who will threaten to leave. Take away the power. If you're married to someone who keeps threatening to leave, you tell them, the next time you threaten, I'll show you the door. I'm not going to be leveraged by that threat. Stay or leave, don't threaten. First marriage counseling that I can remember. It might not have been the first one, but the one I can remember. And I really did not want to be counseling. Okay, I'm red. I want to get in there, tell you knock it off, and go home. Okay? Don't have any patience for the nonsense. And now some of you are thinking, you still don't. You should have seen me then. You could talk to Uncle Bob, he'll tell you. But, so I'm counseling this couple, and some of you have heard this story, but I'm counseling this couple, and the wife says to me, in front of him and everything, and she's crying. She's like, I'm so tired of him always threatening to leave, and he's, So I looked him in the eye, and I said, you need to knock it off. I said, be a man, leave or stay, but stop threatening. She freaks out. He'll leave. Don't do that. He'll leave. I said, then stop complaining about it. I mean, I'm trying to fix your problem. I'm red. You're upset that he threatens, so I'm going to fix that. Knock it off. I said, why would you want him to stay? You're already telling me he's doing this, he's doing that, he's doing this, he's doing that. So what? She was afraid. Afraid to be on her own. Afraid he might leave. Afraid of the rejection. I said, but you're miserable now. I'm going to tell him he needs to step up and be the man and be what he's supposed to be. He offered to marry you. He asked you to marry him, actually, right? He said he would do all these things for you. He's got to either do them or he's not doing you any favors. So I told him that. And then I said, and there was a little girl involved. She was, I don't know, whatever, first grade maybe, okay? So I took her in the kitchen and made her some mac and cheese. I said, you guys talk a little bit. And ultimately he did leave, not then, but soon enough afterwards. And she ended up being fine after all that stuff. But I'm saying is, you got to take away the leverage or you're never going to get anywhere. Either you want to work it out or you don't want to work it out. A marriage does not work one-sided. It barely works two-sided. It's rough. You take two weird, crazy people who have something wrong with them, who are broken and damaged, and you put them in the same space forever, that's a disaster. Unless they work really hard at it. It's a lot. Okay? It is a lot. And so, this is why I talk about that whole multiple wife thing. I said, I don't know why anybody would want two. Not because I'm insulting women, because I have to work hard enough to figure out one. I got to figure out two. And that's not because they're so hard. They got to figure out me, right? And then they got to figure out each other. That dynamic cannot possibly be a recipe for shalom in the house. There's no way. I got two ladies. They got to get along with each other, and they got to get along with me. Oh, we're all going to agree on everything all the time. I'm winking for those you can't see. Like, yeah, that's going to happen. It takes a lot. You got to be very selfless. Okay, it's really tough. It takes a lot of work. Of course, they don't tell you that in pre-marriage school because there is no such thing. You just decide, I want to get married, find somebody willing to do it. You don't even have to do that. Just go to the courthouse, they'll do it. Go to the city steps, somebody will do it. It's not a hard thing to get done. Go through a drive-thru in Vegas and get it done. It's not hard to get married. But being married, that's tough. And because you really have to deal with your stuff. And while you're trying to deal with your stuff, you got to deal with their stuff. That's a challenge. In the meanwhile, you've got all these things influencing you. They've got all their stuff influencing them. And it makes a happy party in your house. Oh, my goodness. So your past. All right? So your past. A lot of you are really handicapped by things that have happened in your past. And some of you had some really awful things happen. We are not diminishing, we are not minimizing the horrors that maybe you went through. Some of you have horrors happening more recently. And they might not be horrors like abuse from the point of view. I've had to counsel 2 families, 3 families actually, in the last year and a half that have lost a loved one in horrific ways. A murder, 2 motorcycle accidents. Could you imagine? Losing children, losing a spouse in horrific ways. How do you move on from that? But you have to. Life doesn't end. There are people that need you and count on you. People that you need also. There's all kinds of, but if you're influenced by that, or you had a horrific thing happen as a child, you were abused, you were molested, you had something horrible happen to you, or you witnessed something as a child. Maybe you witnessed an ugly, degenerative death of a parent. Okay, we have people that have had that experience. They had to watch a parent die of some awful cancerous thing and watch them just go from this wonderful, strong, beautiful parent to this just thing that destroyed and ravaged them. How do you let that go? Well, it's not that you let it go. You have to repackage it so that it's information that you can still have available because it could be useful. It could be useful for you to help someone else dealing with the same thing, and they're currently dealing with it. You dealt with it in your past. But you have to let go the negative emotional part of it. The anger, the bitterness. Because if you're still angry and bitter with a loved one, and they're still alive, let's say, and a loved one that did something to you and everything else, even though things have passed and everything else, you're never going to be able to have a good relationship with them, no matter how much they might have changed, or even if, you know what? I had to realize this. My father and we fought. Not so much physically, but we fought, like it felt like every day. And it probably wasn't a whole lot less than every day. For my whole teenage year, for 7 or 8 years, it seemed like, or more. And, but he's 85 now. And I came to realize at some point, he still can push my buttons, but he's 85. What could he really do? You know what I'm saying? But at some point, you have to realize, yeah, mom can still push my buttons, dad can still push my buttons, but really, you're now married and have kids or grandkids, whatever. You've got another life. What can they do? They make me feel guilty. Nah, you're allowing them to do that. They're throwing words at you and you're accepting them, so don't accept them. Here, I can walk up to anybody and hand them this phone. They don't have to take it from me. But you gave me the phone. No, I offered you the phone. So they're offering you threats. They're offering you guilt. They're offering you, just look at them and laugh and say, listen, I'm immune now, Mom. Okay? That, sticks and stones may break my bone. It's almost like that dumb. But words don't hurt you. Okay? But what if it's not somebody you're still interacting with, but it's something that happened in the past? Even more reason to be able to let it go and move on. It could, look, if you were molested or abused horribly as a young child by a much older person, and now you're older, they're not even around, most likely. And why are you still letting that limit your choices? It's controlling you. It's hard, though, because anytime you are in a strong emotional state, okay? This is kind of understanding how our programming works a little bit. Anything that happens when you're in a strong emotional state gets linked to that situation, okay? So, in other words, if somebody really upset you and hurt you and crushed your feelings and whatever it is, and that was happening consistently, and while it was happening, there was a certain smell. That smell gets linked to that state. Or there was a certain sound or music playing in the background. Like maybe you were living in a house that had a certain air conditioning or something that made a rattling sound, a certain rattling sound. That rattling sound could get linked, and you hear something like that, you could be right back in that place. Or a smell can put you right back in a positive way. You smell certain things, and it takes you right back to a great memory. It works in both directions, okay? My wife is so consistent with the way she loves to tell me the stories for the 50th time, which is okay, because every time something happens, it reminds her, and then she tells me. So every time a certain song comes on the radio, she's right back playing volleyball in high school. And I get to hear that every time the song comes on. I know, back to high school, I get it. But it's so embedded in her head that that's like they just kept playing this song all the time whenever they were practicing. And so every time she hears it, she's right back there playing volleyball. But you have to understand this influence happens also in the negative stuff. If a certain touch usually led to some sort of bad thing. I had a friend, you were absolutely at risk of getting punched or in some sort of violent way if you ever walked up behind him and touched him on the shoulder. I got hit at least once. Only once, I think, because I learned my lesson quickly. But because in his house, where the violence was, you got that shoulder grab and then you got beat. So that touch had embedded. So his immediate reaction was to just turn and punch. He didn't think. He didn't care who it was. He was triggered. And so we can link anything experientially. Sounds, smells, touches, things that we see, something that looks like a person that looks like, something can really trigger you. Okay? And so that's part of the power of the past. And when we deal with the past, we have to recognize that it's limiting our choices, which means that it's controlling us. And it's funny because a lot of people, I shouldn't say it's funny, but it's kind of ironic. We'll call it that. It's ironic that a lot of the people that are very controlled are the ones who are out there doing the most controlling. They're imposing themselves on all aspects of their lives. And they're driving people around them somewhat dizzy because they come across very controlling. And they don't understand that it's a response to being controlled. And somewhere deep down, you know you're being controlled, and now you need to impose control. Because you need to have that sense of control. And so there's almost like an irony in there. This control thing that's going on. And it's also something that you need to understand, and I want you to be aware of in yourself. And I'm just free thinking here as we're going through this little, I don't know what this is, little teaching seminar here. There's a psychological thing known as projecting. Okay? And most of us generally do this without understanding what we're doing. And so the person that is actually the controlling person will almost always be the one pointing the finger at you saying you're a controlling person. That's not to say that you aren't if you're getting the finger pointed at you, but it's when you don't let them have control, they think you're controlling. When you put some sort of a blockage to their ability to control, now you're the controlling person. But yet you're not the one that needed the world to be a certain way. They are. And when you didn't let that happen, well, you're just a control. My friends see you, you're controlling. I'm just not letting you do every little thing you just want to do and mess with everything that's going on in your life. I said, no, that's enough. We're not doing that. Okay? That can feel like control. I've been accused of being a control freak as the leader of the group because I say no sometimes. No, we're not doing that. No, that's not happening here, or no, that's not what we're going to do there. Oh, you're just a control freak. I'm not a control freak. I have a fiduciary responsibility to guard the vision I have, which means that I have to protect it from influences coming into the situation to redirect the vision, which means I get to say, no, we're not going that way. We're going this way. So I became very controlling when a lady asked me to anoint her. And I was about to anoint her. I had some other people come in the room. We were going to anoint her. We were going to pray over her. And before I get started, she interrupted me and says, but I don't want you to do that thing at the end where you say, nevertheless, your will be done, and that kind of thing, and whatever. She was trying to tell me how to pray. And I said, have a nice day. I did. I said, but then I'm not going to do it. Bye. And I got up and left the room. And she just was like, where'd he go? You asked me to do something, I'm going to do it. But now I have the freedom of how I do it. You're not going to tell me how to do it. Then why'd you come to me? I mean, if you're going to control the whole thing, do it to yourself. Here's some oil, rub it on your own head. I mean, you know. I had freedom of choice. I could have done it her way. I could have still done it my way, or I could have just walked out. I had choices. I decided. Now, I also had the choice to be angry or not. I wasn't angry. I just said, okay. Because she was arguing with me. I said, I can't believe I'm arguing with somebody to anoint them. I said, forget it. I'm not doing it. So then I got talked bad about after that, I'm sure. I don't care. Okay, so are we starting to understand this? Is it making sense? I'm just always like, because you guys are just really doing a good job of focusing and paying attention, so I can't really read you right now. That's why I'm asking these questions. All right, because even like the first part that we did, I had a bunch of people later tell me how much it was really appreciated everything else, but I really had trouble reading you guys because you're really paying attention, which is really great. All right, let's see. So out of control. Out of control. So we are in a state that is chaotic and confused as to who or what should influence us. In some respects, it's rebellion to all authority. Okay, at some point, you snap. Okay? That's when you're out of control. You just snap. Okay? Now, I'm not saying when you snap, when you're in control, that's a triggered, angry response, freaked out. I mean, there are responses that look like out of control, but you are actually being controlled. You snap because that's the triggered response. But there are moments where you actually are just out of control. You're like, you're so angry that you were controlled, you're so angry at everything else, you're so freaked out, you're so scared, some strong negative emotion that you're just bursting in all directions, just freaked out. Okay? You're just having a meltdown. That's not just a reaction, like a controlled response, where someone controlled you or an influence controlled you. You literally lose it. Okay? That's when you're out of control. Okay? And that often happens because you're not only upset about whatever got triggered, but you're also upset because you're tired of being controlled. You don't know that that's what's happening, but you're tired of feeling that way all the time. Somebody might say, I'm tired of being stressed all the time. I'm tired of being manipulated all the time. I'm tired of being angry all the time. I'm tired of being afraid all the time. So then the next time you get triggered and it has that extreme, more than normal reaction, it's because now you've actually lost control. Because you got triggered again and you're so tired of it, your system just goes into a meltdown and maybe even a shutdown. And then you end up in the hospital. Or some other thing, because you just can only handle so much. That's the out of control place. We want to avoid that. I've seen some people lose their minds. Like just flip. Completely irrational, out of control. They've just been pushed too far. Okay? You can see that when it's a reaction that you're not surprised at, but it's way beyond what you've ever seen. In other words, you're not surprised because you've seen it before, but not like that, okay? We're talking about, Richter scale exponential, earthquake meltdown. Somebody's normally at like a 2, and now they're at a 5, which on the Richter scale is like 1,000,000 times bigger than the 2, okay? Then you're probably seeing out of control. Somebody has totally lost it. The more you allow things to control you, the more likely that's going to happen. You guys, we talked about this earlier today about, going deeper. This is going deeper. Not Talmud or Kabbalah or Gematria or Paleo or whatever. The book of Enoch, the book of Jasher, the book of Jubilees, the blah, 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 blah. Look, you want deeper? Go look in the mirror and say, I need to figure out how to fix this. Okay? And it's because I'm sick and I'm tired. Because being controlled makes you sick. And it's exhausting. So you're literally sick. So be sick and tired of being sick and tired. And say, you know what? But see, what you normally will do is you want to attack all the influencers to make them stop. And you can't. You can't make them stop. But you can change how they affect you. Now, to some degree, you can stop some of them. Not a problem to say, let's say it's a parent at the house, and they're in their 70s or 80s, and they're driving you crazy. Say, Mom, Dad, there is a home I can put you in right down the road and take very nice care of you. If you don't like the way I'm doing it, you have choices. Oh, well, I don't want to live, well, that's your choice too. They'll look at you like, what? I'm tired of the whining. I'm tired of the threatening. I'm tired of the emotional manipulation. Oh, I'm not doing, They play that whole innocent, oh, no, I'm not doing any of that. Liar, liar, pants on fire. Okay. Did I say that out loud? Because they know they can play the frail older person card. Oh, how mean can I be? I can barely walk. Yeah, but you can talk. Tongue's working real good, Mom. Yeah, you do have trouble walking, but that lip and that mouth is still going. Love on them. My recommendation always, by the way, when you're trying to influence an influencer, to get them to stop, when you want to draw a line in the sand, is first tell them what you would prefer, the loving part. Mom, I'd love you to stay. Dad, I'd love you to stay. Whatever the situation is. If it's a kid, you may have a problem with a kid, by the way, who happens to be 30 and still living in your basement. Okay? There's a door right there, bud. By the way, locksmiths are quick. If they're outside the house, just fix it right there. Knock, knock, knock. What's the matter? My key doesn't work. Get the hint. Did you also notice the pile of stuff in the front lawn? I was nice enough to put it in boxes for you, just in case. I didn't want it to rain on it or something. Okay, but understand that you want to have, even when you have a heated deal with your spouse, and there's an influencer problem there, and you're having you know what? You can say, look, I'm tired of the threats, tired of the manipulation, but you need to know, I want to be married to you. I love you. This thing is just not working the way it's going. And I'm not going to have you threaten and manipulate me and everything else, every other whatever. So if push comes to shove, This thing has got to stop one way or the other. I would prefer you package it. In the beginning, you package with what you would prefer, the good possible good outcome, and you put it again at the end and say, I would prefer to fix this, but I am willing to go here because I'm not willing to stay here in the middle. Most relationships, I don't want to scare you because most of you probably would know for sure what I'm talking about. But almost every marriage at some point hits that almost divorced moment. And a lot of the best marriages are because they got there and survived and figured it out. But you had to get there because that's when you figure out what you really want. And that's when you figure out you might be willing to make some changes or tolerate things a little differently or view things a little differently and how you handle things. But I love people who say, oh, I've got a perfect marriage and my wife and I, we've never fought ever. You're not married. You're a freak. I mean, actually, I wouldn't say that. I would say, I'm thinking in the back of my head, you're lying your pants off for public use. You're just lying because you don't want people to know that you guys go home and kill each other. And you don't, by the way, you don't necessarily, you might have two white, yellowish people who just sort of, their colors right, and they don't yell and scream a lot or anything, but they're ignoring each other and neglecting. They don't have a good, close, abiding relationship. You may have some of that other stuff going on that doesn't necessarily get heated. If it's red and blue, you get some heat. You put them both in the same house, you get an inferno. Okay? It can get loud because both want to grab a hold of that wheel. All right. Blues, please don't let that side of you drive, okay? If you want to drive, try and drive with your red side so you can be more rational and more logical in that emotional state. That's not to say blues are never rational and logical, but when you're grabbing the wheel, it's usually because you're fearful something's going to go bad or wrong, and you're going to usurp authority or you're going to do some other thing and impose yourself. That's the place you should never let drive, the negative side of that. Reds, don't let your anger jump out. That's your negative side. Try to stay logical and rational and calm. Reds, grab the white side of it and find peace. Calm down. Okay? See, all of us have our negative sides. But you get an angry, explosive red with a fearful grabbing the wheel blue, that's a tug of war that isn't going to end well. It can be tough. Amen, right? I don't know who said that, but I agree. That was a red man with a blue wife sitting next to each other going, amen. Could have been either one of them, by the way. They both get it. I'm a red with a blue wife. I mean, I can tell you, I know what I'm talking about. Awesome, listen, awesome woman. But it's the way our personalities go. It's a hard thing. You are married to somebody, you probably think, he's awesome, she's awesome. I've heard wives tell me, I can't live with him, but he's got the biggest heart and he's great and everything, but he doesn't have this and whatever else is driving you nuts. Wives, I hear the husband say the same thing. I love her, she's great and everything, but this other thing is just, I can't deal with this thing. Well, the key word there is I can't deal with it, not because it's something that can't be dealt with. Can we go back to that nothing's personal, everything is about choice. You're following along, right? Well, I can't deal with blah, blah, blah. Okay, let's deal with, and I start talking about them, and they go, no, they're the problem. No, right now the problem is how you're handling them. I can't fix them. I'm talking to you. I can help you repackage how you're handling what they're doing and how you can receive it differently, respond to it differently. We can go through some skills and things that maybe I'll get to here before we finish. I'll give you some things you can do, okay? One of the things I gave you already to do is you need to be looking in that mirror and figuring out that you are the problem in your life. Oh, no, it's my mother, it's my father, it's my brother, it's my husband, it's my wife, it's my kids. Some of you say, no, wait, I like that list, all of it. My mother, father, kids, all that stuff. And you wonder why you're like not getting any sleep, your hair's falling out, and you're stressed. I mean, that's really the problem. Stress kills. Okay? Stress kills. You know, I want you to picture with your health. I love this analogy. When I was in massage school many, many years ago, the teacher was teaching us about, part of the class had to do with health for whatever reason, nutrition part of that. Because it's not like a tiny little mini 8 or 10 week, whatever it was, like medical class. I had to learn anatomy and physiology and all this stuff, and some things about health. And the health part of it, he gave us a great analogy. He said, picture your immune system, because we're doing all the systems of the body. Picture your immune system like a bucket, okay? Let's call it a 10-gallon bucket or whatever, just to make an arbitrary size. When we have stress in our lives, it makes the bucket smaller. Okay, so you have a 10-gallon bucket, and that bucket's a good-sized bucket. As long as all the junk that's coming into your life, any kind of bacteria, maybe some cancer, all of you got bacteria and viruses and cancers and things always running in and out of your body all the time. But when your immune system is working right, it generally handles it. You don't have a problem, okay? Because you don't get cancer generally the way people think. It wakes up, it triggers. It was always there. But it doesn't always trigger. Some people never have it trigger, okay? And so what happens is we have stress. I don't know, what kind of stress? Well, let's see. We'll only deal with the adult side. So we're adults and we decide we need to move out on our own. That's not stressful. And then we have to get a job. Well, that's not stressful. And then we fall in love with somebody. Well, that's not stressful. And then we think, I know how to fix all this. I'll get married. That's not stressful. I know, we'll have children. No stress there. Now you've got like a 6-ounce bucket and wonder why you're sick, because nothing can fit in there compared to the way it was before. And so now some of you may be thinking, now that makes sense why I've been sick more now than before, because maybe you got an awful lot of stress. And by the way, you also get stressed because of the pollution in the air, the pollution in the water, the pollution in the food. I mean, all these things, the toxic stuff that's in the chemicals and the processes, you're coming into things that stress your system. So stress isn't just an emotional state. It's something that actually, the emotional state is not really called stress. I mean, anger stresses your system. Frustration stresses your system. Stress, the way most people talk about from a psychological point of view, is a fear-based thing. You're stressing over something, meaning you're afraid it's not going to happen, it's not going to work, it's going to break, it's going to go bad, so you stress. All right? Generally speaking, Reds don't stress. We have lots of stressors in our anger and our frustration. That stresses our system. Remember, because the Reds are not as fear-based. So we're not stressed, concerned something's going to go bad. We don't care. We'll fix it. Okay? We're not worried about it. We'll get another one. We'll fix it, whatever. But that doesn't mean that we don't have stressors to our system. Okay? My system is very stressed this week by the fact that I'm getting almost no sleep. I'm working very hard. This is stressing the system. I am relaxed. So I'm not in an emotional state we think of as stressed. Because I had somebody look at me the other day and say, well, you look stressed. I said, no, I'm frustrated right now. Because some things were happening that were impeding what I needed to have done. I didn't have any fear that it was going to get done. Didn't have any concerns that it wasn't, it was just getting frustrating because things were getting done that were slowing it down, getting in the way, whatever. And it was a bunch of it, and I was ready to just yell from the top of my lungs, well, anybody just finished something in this building. Because we had a lot of projects that just weren't done. Nobody's fault in particular, but it was just frustrating me. But to a person who's used to being stressed, it could look like stress. But was it stressing my system? Absolutely. Because any negative emotion will stress your system. When my wife and I were trying to have our first child, and we had some fertility stuff going on, we went and saw a guy speak who had some health products. He was giving a seminar at a health food store, like a health store. And he had some, lotions, potions, formulas, whatever they're supposed to help the fertility system. So we wanted to hear the guy speak. It was a free seminar, so we went to it. And he had a really interesting thing that he said. I really liked it a lot. He says, any thought that's less than a loving thought is toxic. I thought that was very profound. I said, I'm very toxic. I've got a lot of less than loving thoughts that go through my head from time to time. Okay? But I think he's right. Any thought you have that's less than a loving, shalom-filled, peace-filled, joy-filled thought is actually toxic to your body. By the opposite side of that, if you have love and joy and peace, and you can experience that, it is actually a health benefit to your body. Okay? It is very healthy, they've actually measured this, to laugh. Anybody heard that? I heard a story, who knows, urban legend, many, many years ago, that there was somebody that was told by the doctor that they had terminal cancer of some sort, and they were going to die. They only had so much time, whatever. And they said, I'm going to go out laughing. And they went, this is back when we had, VCRs and tapes, right? VHS tapes. Went out there, rented a whole bunch of the funniest movies that they knew they loved, and just basically laughed all day for weeks. Do you know they got better? I mean, that might be something for some of you that are dealing with stuff. Go laugh yourself, to health. Not laugh. People say, I laugh to death. No, laugh to health. See, you're already starting. Good job. You're all laughing. That's something I forgot to diagnose people. When people say they're dying, I'll do that. It's not going to hurt anything. You'll have fun. You'll laugh. Because it actually gets the body to generate certain things in your body that are actually strengthening to the immune system and help health. The hormones that are released, the other chemicals that are released. Just like there are chemicals released when you go and work out at a gym that make you feel good. So the feel-good brain, chemicals get released when you're working out. That's how you get this sort of, a pumped-up workout high. That's how people can get addicted to working out, because it makes them feel good. So these are some things. So understand that we are a society that is so busy and so connected. Because after all, we're on Facebook, we're on this, we're on that. We're always connected in some ways that we're so plugged in all the time. These are huge stressors on our system. Okay? The guy who ran that seminar actually looked at me and said, you need to unplug. He said, I learned all this because I almost was, I don't know if he said he almost died or not, but he was so he ended up in a hospital. He was a stockbroker, trader guy, big guy in the stock and all the stuff, and he was go, 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 make it happen 24/7, boom, boom, boom. And he said, it almost killed me. He said, I made lots of money, but I was so plugged in all the time, go, go, go. And he told me, now when he said unplug, he didn't mean like cell phones. We didn't have a lot of this stuff when I went to these seminars, okay? This is we're talking about 1999, maybe cell phone. We weren't all cell phones and tablets and, all these other things and Facebook and everything. We just, my cell phone then was a flip phone. It wasn't plugged into anything. It just answered calls. I know this is weird, but my phone was used for phone calls. My child came up to me this a couple of years back before now they have their own. Okay? My son or daughter wanted my phone. I said, what? I want to play a game on it. I said, my phone makes calls. Maybe your mom's phone plays games. Now, mine could, of course, at the time, but I was like, this phone is used for phone calls. Okay? And she looked at me like, that's weird. All right? Because at that point, she didn't have anybody to call. She was probably 10 years old. Anyway, so when we look at these things, you need to understand that you are also overloaded. The system it's overloaded. I've been told by a lot of people, I'm going to burn out. I'm overloaded. I'm close. I have more capacity, but I'm getting close. Because people have watched me and said, listen, don't burn out. I'm monitoring that. Okay, I am. And I am getting close to capacity. And I may need to do something in future feasts where I actually schedule in more breaks for myself. Okay? You're all applauding now, but when I don't have room for you on my schedule for counseling, you won't be applauding. Okay? Or for questions and everything else. Because I hope you understand there are people out there as speakers or teachers or leaders where I remember when I went to Worldwide Church of God, the leader teacher guy would come in, give a sermon, go out. You'd never see him again. That would be it. I try to give myself or give you my availability every minute I can while I'm here. I'll talk to you during meals. I'll talk to you before meals. I'll talk to you after meals. Talk to you before the session, after the session, during the session. I'll stay up outside in front of the building and talk to people, which I did last night. Okay? Or the night before. Last night it was raining. Okay? So, but I have to recognize the same thing. you need to recognize the same thing yourself. Are you unplugging it all? Do you give your system a chance to, have peace for a little while? We're hyper-stimulated. I mean, we have this is a hyperstimulation device. You keep it in your pocket or your purse or somewhere. A phone is basically a hyperstimulation device. It keeps you constantly, I got to check my messages, I got to check my text, I got to check Facebook, I got to check this, I got to check that. I'm on Marco Polo, I'm doing whatever I'm doing. You got to start to have time where you put this aside and then you're disconnected. But then you go to your computer. No, disconnect. You need that break. You need to decompress. Okay? What did Yeshua show us as his example? Remember, we want to tie this all back to our Messiah. What did Messiah do on a regular basis? He stood up and walked away from everybody. And sometimes he was gone all day. And they didn't know where he was. They were just waiting on him. He said, I am drained by you. I mean, people drain you. Okay? I mean, you guys, I know you're worn out a little bit from all the activities and all the fun and everything and staying up, the hours or whatever, but you're getting still a vacation. Okay, this is a vacation for you. This is the most work I do all year. Actually, I do it twice. I do it for unleavened bread too. This is my most effort. Instead of just having Tuesday night Torah study and Saturday to have, this is every day, all day. People have asked in the past, well, who are your guest speakers? And just me. That's who's speaking. And a lot of times they say, well, so it's funny because some people will call up and say, yeah, I found your feast on our web and whatever. I said, are you familiar with us? Nope, never heard of you. I said, they'll say, well, who's your speaker? I said, well, it's just me. I said, have you ever heard me speak before? Nope. I said, you might want to go listen before you come. Tell you what, here's my website, here's the YouTube. Go listen. Well, why? Because I'm different. In what way? Just go listen. But they're always curious, like, well, different how? Just go listen. If you like what you hear, you'll be getting 8 days of that, then give us a call back. If you don't, then don't. And more than half of them never call back. I don't even know if they ever even listened to the teaching, so I can't assume they listened and didn't like it. They might even have just not liked the fact that I told them to do it, because I'm trying to put control on them. He wouldn't let me come. He screened me. I'm not screening you from coming. I'm just preventing you from showing up and going, what? Because I am different in the teaching than maybe they've ever heard. I think you all would agree, right? So, I'm not saying that's good or bad. I know it's different. You may think it's good, but I'm simply saying I know for sure it's not the way most people out there are doing this. So I warn people. I say, look, if you've never heard me teach, I think you ought to go check it out first so you just know, because you're going to be getting a full time just me. All right? Now, maybe at some point we'll have other teachers come up as other teachers develop and evolve into people to put up here. But for right now, I always find myself in a quandary because sometimes I've had people I can put up from time to time, but I know that some of you are so looking forward to hearing me live and being here that you would be disappointed if I put somebody else in front of the microphone. So it puts me in a hard place. So even if I have somebody to put in front of the microphone, that could be a challenge. I get that. I'd love to, speak a whole lot less to some degree and have some time to, because this gets a little rough, especially on my throat. Although I'm still feeling pretty good. I think we'll make it through today, tonight, and then tomorrow's service. I think we'll be fine. But keep praying about that. But this is the kind of thing that we have to deal with. In our lives, are you doing too much? And if you're doing too much, why? Is there a way to simplify your life at all? Maybe you have 2 jobs, you should have 1. But I can't afford 1. Well, no, you can if you had a better one. So maybe you need to aim higher to get the better one, so you don't need a not so better 2. Okay, you have 2 not so great jobs instead of 1 great job. Whatever you need to be doing, maybe it's not the job problem, it's the lifestyle you're trying to maintain. You could live on 1 if you just lower the lifestyle a little bit. Some of you are thinking, I can't go any lower in my lifestyle. I get that too. All right? But we have to figure this out, because otherwise we are going to be very unhealthy, okay? Because that stress on our system is going to lead to really, really challenging problems. Okay, where are we going next? All right, so in control, right? So I talked about controlled, with the different influencers. I talked about out of control, not really knowing what you're going to do with that state. You're freaking out. So when we're in control, we recognize in every situation that we have total freedom of choice in how we respond and react, okay? But in order to do, the big word there is recognize. We recognize that we have. One of the things that you have to do to be successful in this journey of whatever we're trying to show here in gaining control is you have to start with being more aware. And not so much aware of everybody around you, but more aware of you. Almost like you're outside yourself, watching yourself a little bit. Be aware. I mean, I caught myself the other day getting angry, and then I was aware. And I said, why are you angry? Why are you letting that make you angry? You need to let that go. But I only could do that because I decided to try to be more aware that day. Okay? And I had somebody trying to really make me pop, and I literally said to them, I'm not going to yell. Just do your best, push all the buttons, not yelling. And I didn't. But I had to be in a place of awareness that that was what I was going to be able to do. And now because I was aware, I was able to be in control. And I had a choice. Because under normal circumstances, I would have exploded my normal red explosion. All right? Look, if you've seen Fiddler on the Roof, I grew up in a house that the normal volume of conversation was like Tevye. I won't be late. I won't be late. He's screaming, right? If you ever stop talking, I won't be late. But he's talking, but he's screaming. But they're not really fighting. Because she laughs at him. He goes, people are scared when I start yelling. He says, when I get home, I'll faint. She mocks him, But that's their relationship, But I was aware. Being aware, I didn't do what would have normally triggered. And that was my goal, is to start becoming more aware. As I started putting this teaching together, I started thinking about the idea of being, and I taught this to the men's and ladies group at the congregation about being in control a little bit. I gave a lot more detail here today. But it made me be aware of this idea of being out of control, in control, and what it really means to have total freedom of choice. And so I'm trying to be in a place where when I'm going to put a password in, that if it doesn't work, I won't explode. I'm still failing at that, by the way. Most of the time. But I'm just saying, we have to learn to gain control. You think you have good excuses to do A, B, or C. You can have an excuse to do anything you want if you can justify anything. But if you're in control, you have freedom of choice. All right? Okay. Let me just see what's next. I think I already covered that a little bit. Well, I'm going to cover this anyway. We did cover it, but I want to just go over the little bullet points here real quickly. So, what is the true cause or source of all of your negative psycho-emotional states? In other words, what's really causing all those negative emotions? It says here to discuss the effect of influence on the emotions, and we talked about that. And we did that. The triggers, the buttons, the reactive response, we talked about that. Okay, so what areas of this life does it affect? I want you to make sure you understand it affects everything. It'll affect when you are in a negative emotional place and you have influencers that are controlling you, it will affect your physical health choices and decisions. It'll affect your psychological and emotional health choices and decisions. It'll affect your education and career choices and decisions. It'll affect your spouse choices and decisions. And if you're already married, it'll affect your choices to stay in marriage or not. It'll affect your spiritual choices and decisions, your financial choices and decisions, your leisure choices and decisions. Excuse me. How does all this affect? Okay, let me get back to the leisure ones for a second. Okay. How many of you, don't raise your hand, it's okay. Well, you can if you want, I guess, but you have freedom of choice. How many of you have things that you do for leisure that you are absolutely confident are not a problem, but you know others might think sideways of you, so you hide it or don't let people know? Anybody? See a few people, right? I got really tired of that at one point, so I don't do that anymore, okay? I really got tired of it. So if I choose to go see the Avengers movie, I don't have any problem telling you I saw the Avengers movie. If I like to, after Shabbat is over and everything's all said and done and I'm sitting at Five Guys, if I like to pull out my phone and play a goofy game on my phone, I will do that right in front of you. I'm not embarrassed. My wife thinks it's something I should be embarrassed about. It's like, why do you play in front of me? They all know I play. That's it. Okay? And some of them now play also in the same game I play. Which is fine. But I'm not, in other words, your leisure choices. Don't be afraid to be you. Don't be ashamed to be you. If you think it's a shame, you shouldn't do it. If you think it's fine, why do you hide it and avoid it and everything else? If you think it's fine, you should be able to do it in front of anybody. Okay? But I did have influencers that did pressure me because I knew that they were going to freak out and quit the congregation. These are the kind of people who would come to your house and they would look under literally look at every book on your little coffee table. They'll look at every video and thing that's in your bookcase. They're going to look at everything inside your medicine cabinet. They'll look for everything because they were looking for something to accuse. Anybody know people like that? Okay? And so I just didn't want to give them any fodder for, the finger point. And at some point I looked at my wife, and I was actually tearful at that point. And Reds, we don't cry a whole lot. But I was just so tired of not being allowed like everybody else to be myself. You understand what I'm saying? Because after all, I'm in front of a microphone. Well, so what? Okay, what? I'm still a person. I just happen to have a gift to do this better than most people. Just like when I go to get my car fixed, I hope the guy who fixes my car has a gift to do that better than most people. Or when I go to the doctor, I hope they have a gift to do that better than most people. Whatever it is, I hope they have a gift to do it. I hope the teachers teaching my children have a gift to do that better than most people. I still expect them to be kind of normal like anybody else. Normal meaning we're all weird and we're, whatever it is, okay? And I said, what's wrong with you? I said, something wrong with everybody. And I said, I'm tired. I'm just going to be me. If everybody quits, I don't care. After all, I went back to being red. I said, I'm going to be me. If they all quit, that's fine. So if you're here and you interact with me off the microphone, you come to realize I'm pretty much the same wherever you see me. And I think some people come up to me and say that they find that refreshing. They've met a few pastors in their day who came up and put on a show up here, and then down there they were a completely different person. I don't want to be anything but just, now when I say just me growing into him. Okay? But I want to be me all times as I'm growing into him. I don't want to put on a show. And you shouldn't either, is my point. Okay? My whole point is that you should be okay being you. Not you trying to please this one, or you trying to please that one, or you being afraid this one's going to criticize you, or that one's going to do this. Be you. You are unique and awesome in all the different ways that you're unique and awesome, and you are a pain in the you-know-what, just like anybody else is. Okay? I mean, you are. I am. We all are. We can all irritate people. We can all push their buttons. We can disappoint. We can offend. We can do everything that you feel people do to you. You are doing it to somebody. Oh, not me. All right, maybe. Okay? Because even you sweet, gentle, quiet types can frustrate the people like, yeah, but you don't ever get motivated. You're not driven. Because those of us that are driven do step on toes occasionally, pile right through people, and maybe blast through when I don't give you the right attention. Many of you have already experienced that with me. You've tried to say hi to me when I'm on my way somewhere. I'm probably not going to stop. That's not that I shouldn't. I just have some. I use this analogy. If it looks like the arrow has left the bow, just get out of the way. Just a public service announcement from the rabbi. Okay? If the arrow has left the bow, it is safer just to get out of the way. I'm probably going to handle something that needs to be handled. I have to get there quickly. I don't have time to stop and fellowship and socialize. There's other times you'll see I'll stand outside till 3 in the morning talking if people are out there hanging out. At that point, the arrow's in the quiver and there's no worry about it shooting. I'm not doing anything that needs my attention. And I'll sit with you and hang out all day long. Not a problem. So it's not that I'm not social. It's not that I can't hang out and do. You just got to make sure that you understand. I have a huge burden of responsibility called leadership, which means that all things that are happening in this thing we're calling Sukkot are ultimately my problem. Even though I've delegated a lot of it and everything else, and so some of it may need my attention from time to time, and that means that since there's so many of it, almost always something needs my attention to some degree. Okay? Plus there's 400 of you, and some of you want my attention. Can I get you after the meeting? Can I get you before the meeting? Can I talk to you before the meal? Can I talk to you after the meal? And I almost always say yes. So you have to be aware of those things. Okay? So back to what we were talking about. So recognize that when you're in control in the physical health, psychological, emotional health, education, career, spouse choices, dating if you're at the dating age, and that kind of thing, financial, leisure, career, all, you have freedom of choice. I've had to talk to a few people lately where I've had to say, you can be anything. Well, I don't know. Blah, blah. All right, you can say that and do whatever, but I'm telling you, you can do anything. You can. Some things will come more easily than others. I'll give you an example. I went to a homeschool conference or something where they had some class, they had breakout sessions all over the place in a big room. You could buy a bunch of stuff for homeschooling. So I went to see the guy who does a math program, okay? And he was talking about how, he was always obsessed with math, loved math. His son was great at math, but his son didn't like math. He's great at it, had the same gift his father had, but his son wanted to sing. He said, you don't understand, my son could not sing his way out of a box. He couldn't sing anything. He couldn't keep nothing in tune. But he wanted to sing. And so his son would come home every day after school and practice and read up on, find videos, get on YouTube, whatever it was. I don't even think it was YouTube back then, whatever it was. But he practiced and pursued it. And it was not his natural gift to do. But after all those years of doing it, the guy now teaches singing in a high school or in a college or something like that. See, you don't actually have to have a natural talent for something. You have to want it. You have to want it and love it. And doing what you love, because some people say, that certain things stress them and overload them, but that's because it's something you don't love. You can spend hours and hours working very physically hard or mentally hard on something you love, and it won't feel stressful. Okay? I don't work at all. Nothing that I'm doing feels like work. I put in an awful lot of effort. If you understand what I'm saying. I do a lot. It's not work, though, because I love what I do. Okay? It's physically exhausting. It takes effort. I have to put effort into it. Okay? I have to spend time doing, but it's not laborious. It's not work. It's not toil. And so I would counsel, a little sidebar here for career stuff, I would counsel you to figure out what you enjoy doing. So how many of you, if you're willing to raise your hand, would love to change careers to something else? Okay, let me tell you how to do it, at least how to begin. I want you to make a list of everything you've ever done. Just make a list. This job, that job, this job, everything. Then one at a time, start at the beginning, it doesn't matter. Go through the jobs and ask this question. I'm going to give you a series of questions. First thing is there anything about that job that you enjoyed? I don't mean like just the only tasks of it. I'll make something simple. Let's say you drove a bus, like a school bus. Okay, I didn't like driving, but maybe you liked the kids. You liked that you had kids in the bus, you like being around kids. Or maybe you didn't like kids, but you liked the driving. Then maybe you see what I'm saying? Whatever it is, maybe you didn't like kids or driving, but you liked the fact that you were serving, that you were being a benefit to people filling a need. Think about, was there anything that you liked about the job, that you enjoyed, that was fulfilling? Then ask yourself, well, why was that aspect fulfilling? What was it about it? Did you like being indoors or outdoors? Did you like being with people or not with people? Did you like, being under deadlines and pressure like that, or did you like having total freedom to kind of just creatively get things done whenever? I mean, what did you like? Then ask the second question, what was it about it that you absolutely didn't like? And then ask yourself, why? Why didn't I like that? Because it's okay to say I didn't like it, but you got to ask the question, well, why? What was it about it that you didn't like? Did you really not like it, or you didn't like it because the place that was doing it in such a way that you didn't like it? But if it was done differently, you might have liked it, whatever it was. And then so you're going to end up with two big lists from all of those jobs and all the things you've ever tried and done. All these things that you've enjoyed and love, and all these things that you don't. And then you start asking the question, what kind of careers or things that I could do that pay money can let me do some of this stuff right up here, where most of what I'm doing is up in this stuff? And then you ask, and doesn't have most of this stuff down here? You see? And then next thing you know, you might be like, oh my goodness, that's a blah, blah, blah does most of that. Whatever it is, you can fill it, and it's something you maybe never tried. But it utilizes so many of the things that you liked, the things you enjoy. By the way, also put the things that you were good at and the things that you weren't good at. It's kind of important to have that, but it's not necessarily critical because you can really enjoy something you're not good at. So put those things in the same category. If it's something you were good at but you don't like, put it in the bottom. If it's something you were good at but you liked, put it at the top. If it's something you were bad at but really liked it, even though you weren't good at it, put it at the top, because like the singing guy, you could put in the effort and you could become good at it. Okay? Having a gift at something means that you don't have to work as hard as the average person to be good at it. Okay? To be great at anything, everybody has to put in an extra effort. But to be naturally able to pick up, look, there's some people that just sit down and pick up an instrument, and the next thing you know, they're playing it within seconds. Other people, you could teach them for months. They still can't figure out how to, do a chord or play, whether it's guitar or keyboard, whatever. It's not their natural talent. Okay? But still, to get really good at it, both of them would need to practice and need to work at it. Did that help at all? If you have any friends that are struggling, give them, and by the way, I don't care if you're 30 or if you're 60, you can do this. I tell the story all the time of my friend's mom who, she became an attorney. I think she was in her 60s. She just decided she wanted to go to law school. We all looked at her like, okay, you're 60 or whatever. Well, now she's in her 80s and she's been an attorney for 20 years. So she's been happy. All right? So just understand those things. Now, but realize that's kind of how it is with all of the aspects of your life. You have the freedom of choice. You can analyze and observe what things in your life are you doing well, what things in your life are you not doing so well, and how can you work on the things that you're struggling with. But it starts with a heightened awareness. You got to zoom out to where you have awareness. You understand what I'm talking about? You have to zoom out so you can see the awareness. Okay. Wow, time is just flying here. Okay. Excuse me. So how does all this affect our stability? These influencers, they can create one of two environments. A highly stable but toxic environment. It's stable, but it's not where you want to be. Or it can create a highly unstable environment because of the influence don't allow you to stay put and keep going, or because you're constantly trying to avoid and get away from them. What about our growth and our stagnation or regression? All of this stuff can affect us and turn us into complaining, whining, blaming, finger-pointing, criticizing, controlling people. And it comes out of the misery that we have still built up inside of us. Look, if you're complaining, whining, blaming, criticizing, or controlling, you need to work on that, whatever's underlying all that. Does anybody like being around someone who's like that? Blaming, criticizing, controlling, finger pointing. Anybody like being around someone? No? Then why do you wonder when people don't want to be around you? Because you probably do a bunch of that stuff. Anybody ever criticize? Try to control? Blame? Point a finger? Whine about anything? You're Israelites. Yeah, you did some whining and complaining and griping. I know it. Okay? I certainly do. I'm working on it. Okay. The source of our psycho-emotional state. So we have a default, born with reactive state. Okay, you are born with a certain, look, there's some kids that are born, they just sort of, and other ones are just like they're sucking on a pickle, right? I mean, you're still sort of born with a personality to some degree. You got more than one kid, you know what I'm talking about. They're not the same. From the minute they come out, they're not the same. Okay, so some of this you are born with by default. That doesn't mean you can't fix it, change it, work on it, but you have a default, all right? You also have the learned, imposed, normally connected to experiential and responsive and reactive type of thing. So you have a part of your way you do things and the way that things happen is because you have your default, but you also have what was learned or imposed, because you may have influences that really imposed on you. You'll never amount to nothing. You need to do it this way. You need to believe this thing. You need to understand that this is the way the world works. Money is evil. Money is wonderful. Life is this. Marriage sucks. Marriage is awesome. You got all of this stuff that you could have had imposed on you. Okay? All right? I've heard where, this is some of the awful stuff. I could see a husband and a wife fighting, and the children are there. You don't think that, first of all, influences them and they can see that happening? But what if a parent said to a child, well, I hope you never end up with somebody like your mother, or I hope you never end up with somebody like your father? Oh, my gosh. What kind of influence is that? Anybody ever had that happen anywhere? Okay. As a kid, you maybe heard that. Say, I got a couple of hands. So you have the default, you have the learned, imposed, experiential, responsive, reactive, but then you have the most important one, the one we're striving for, the developed. Okay, you can, by choice, proactively develop your emotional state. This is going to sound very trite and very, old, whatever. You've heard this a million times. Happiness is a choice. But you know what? So is anger. So is joy, so is bitterness, so is love, so is hate. They're all choices. Peace, having shalom, war, being combative. These are all choices. So you have to now try to say, okay, I have my default. I have what I've learned or experienced or was imposed on me. Now I'm going to wake up to the reality that I can develop what I want. And you can. You need to clap for that. You can do this. All right? I want to make sure this audience is not a painting. You're all just staring at me. Now I know why those motivational guys, they jump around the stage, have everybody get up, clap and everything. Oh, look, everybody's alive. Okay, good. All right. You got to work on the developed psycho-emotional state. You could develop that state. Patient. The fruit of the Spirit are developed states. We want to think that the Ruach just comes in and gives us love, joy, peace, patience, blah, blah, blah. No. You have to develop that stuff by submitting through the Ruach to be able to overcome our default and our imposed and our learned stuff. And you pray, Father, fill me with your Spirit to have the strength to learn to find love when I don't understand love. Joy when I have never had it. Peace when there is no peace. Patience, oh, forget that, right? I got to have patience trying to get to patience. All right. How much time I've got? Oh, goodness. Okay. Signs to look for. Okay, so what I want you to be looking for when you're observing yourself, all right? I want you to observe the frequency that you allow yourself to be in a negative emotional state. What's a negative emotional state? I'm angry, I'm bitter, I'm depressed, I'm sad, okay? Any state that's not one that you'd like to stay in. Okay, happy, peaceful, calm, those are states you'd like to stay in. You're agitated, negative state. Angry, frustrated, bitter, depressed, sad, scared, fearful, these are all negative emotional states, all right? So you want to start learning about yourself. Remember, this is up to the challenge. Are you up to the challenge in figuring yourself out and learning about yourself? So how long are you in these states? That's the second thing, okay? How often was the first thing? And now how long? What's the length of time, the duration that you stay in the negative state, the negative emotional place? Are you there usually for a week? Some don't laugh. There are people that can be in there longer than that. Are you there for just a few minutes? Okay? Difference between a red and a blue. A red generally has the same negative state that a blue can have, but it only lasts a few minutes or a few hours at the most. The blue's going to have that for a while. Okay? But you can work on that. That's your default. Okay? That's your default reaction. But you can work on that. By the way, the red's got to work on it too, because the red shouldn't even want to have it for a few seconds, let alone a few hours or days. Why should you go into a negative state ever? Okay? I want you to pay attention to, I left that paper at my desk. I don't have that now. Okay. I want to talk, okay, so what are the negative emotional states? If you go back to the teaching on developing the character of Yeshua, do you see that on the chair it says men's class, blue folder? Open it up. Does it have something about the 2 trees in there? Like a list of emotional states? Yep, that's it. Bring it over here. Maybe I do have it there. No, not that. All right, I got it. Okay, so we're running out of time. Okay. And I thought I wasn't going to have enough to fill the space. And you're all laughing, yeah, Rabbi, you thought that, okay. You didn't think you could fill up the time. And I just dropped my pen. Okay. After eating all those meals, it was hard to bend down and pick up the pen. My belly got in the way. What in the world? All right. The bending down wasn't so hard. Getting back up was, though. Some of you know what I'm talking about. All right. So in the teaching, Developing the Character of Yeshua, I had used the analogy of the 2 trees in the garden. Okay? And we talked about it. I said, in the garden, there were the 2 trees. And beginning in the Garden of Eden, continuously to our present day, Hasatan has been actively trying to get mankind to partake of his nature. Okay, so one tree actually kind of exemplified Yah's nature, and the other, Hasatan's nature. And so I did a little comparison thing back and forth, like the tree of life, unconditional love, Hasatan's nature, or the tree of knowledge of good and evil, conditional love. Okay? On the one side, joy, the other side, unhappiness, depression, and misery. All right? So instead of reading through that whole thing back and forth, I just want to kind of hit on some of those negative states that you might find yourself in and how frequently and how long. But we're talking about things like unhappy, depressed, in misery, agitated, combative, argumentative, angry, in strife, dissension, disobedience, impatient, frustrated, unkind, mean, merciless, uncompassionate, indecent, untrustworthy, unreliable, immature, rough, harsh, inconsiderate, unstable, rash, undisciplined, selfish, stingy, inwardly focused, self-focused, lust, craving, insatiable, lying, arrogant, stubborn, stiff-necked, fear-led, fear and doubt issues, led by pride and ego, unworthy, worthless, not valued, taken for granted, self-pity, rejection. Anybody have any of those? Some of you are like, wait a minute, I had like all of them. Wait. Slow down. I couldn't write them all fast enough. Okay, almost all of these things are mentioned on the teaching that I did. I also have on here that a selfless person, again, cannot be offended, takes nothing personally, does not need to be right or convince others that he or she is right, esteems others above himself, puts others' needs above his own, and does not need things to be their way. That's what we're striving for, to be selfless. But that's something you cannot do when you're being controlled. You cannot do it when you're out of control. You can only do it when you're in control, because it can only be done by choice. You can only choose not to be offended. You can only choose to not take something personally. You have to be able to choose that you don't need to be right. Because I find some people fighting over some dumb thing just because they need to win. They need to be right. I was that person. I know, and that didn't bear any fruit, I can promise you. I was that person when I first started ministry 20 years ago. Just ask some of the people. Well, ask Uncle Bob. I would beat you to death just to show you how wrong you were and how right I was. Now I more gently try to say, I'm sorry, but I just don't think it works that way. And we could talk about it. Instead, I made you feel like an idiot because I thought you were. I'm just being honest. In those days, I just thought you were. Okay? I had some pride issues. I had all kinds of problems. I had a lot of knowledge and information about the scriptures, did the same kind of teachings you hear now, but I was still not mature. Okay? We're still working on it now. But you're seeing the kinder, gentler, more mature version. You should have seen me 20 years ago. Actually, be glad you didn't. Okay? Excuse me. All right. So continuing here in the list. Okay, so we want to be, we talked about the negative states. So what else are we looking for? We're looking for the fruit of the Ruach. I mentioned that already. Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, trustworthiness, gentleness, and self-control. You need to do these by choice. You want to be looking for how you are affected by what happens, quote unquote, to you. When something looks like it's happening to you, are you in control? Are you controlled or out of control? Because remember, it just looks like it's happening to you. Feels like it's happening to you. It may have nothing to do with you. It may have everything to do with them. Forgive them, Father. They don't know what they're doing. Right? Okay. How are you, this is a sign to look for, how you are affected by what happens within your sphere of awareness. So this is not happening to you, but near you. Somewhere where you are able to be aware of it. Because some of you will leave your space or whatever's going on and insert yourself in some other space because you are now aware of something and you decided that it needed you to be involved or somehow had to do with you that it really didn't. So let's be careful with that. A lot of people love to go and jump in and insert themselves where they don't belong. Well, but they said something this and it wasn't right and I needed to straighten it. You know? Somebody makes a Facebook post, asks some sort of question or makes a statement. Somebody else comes in and answers it. It doesn't need you to be involved at all at that point. It's between the two people. I'm just saying, you have to decide. Now, if you are actually close friends with that person, maybe you want to get involved in it. But then if you do get involved, now you got to realize you already have two people talking. You need to be careful you don't disrespect either one of them. Because you're now joining a conversation. It might have been a public post. I'm just giving you an idea of things, how this could look. But now you could be sitting at the cafeteria having a conversation or sitting at a table, and there's another table nearby, and something else is going on over there, and you may decide to jump in and insert yourself in that conversation because something happened that you became aware of. Now, there are some things that you become aware of that do require or that would be appropriate for you to get involved, but you want to start watching yourself about how you are affected by. I didn't say it was wrong to just be affected, but how are you affected? By what happens within your sphere. Because maybe there's something that does need you that you normally would have just been reluctant to do something, but you should. It can go either way. But you want to pay attention to how you are affected by what happens within your sphere of awareness. Normally people talk about the sphere of influence. I want you to be talking about your sphere of anything that comes within your senses that now you're aware of it. Okay? It could be that someone brought it to you and told you about it. So now you know about something, you weren't there, it didn't happen where to you, but you're now aware of it. Or something you were there, but it was over there, it wasn't right, you weren't directly involved. So how are you affected by those things? Are you in control? Are you being controlled? In other words, is there an influencer forcing you, kind of controlling you the way you react, and you feel that you have to go do something? Okay? Or are you out of control? Another sign to look for, how are you affected by what happens that is brought to your awareness? Okay, that was already part of the one I just said. Okay. Are you aware of the level of influence, control you are exerting, imposing, or having on those you have contact with directly or indirectly? So now you should be looking at yourself and saying, am I doing this to anybody? Of course you are. So who and how much? You're doing this to people. After all, you're already aware of how much they're trying to do it to you. Well, you're doing it to people too. You're a human being. You're just as much as people are screwing up your life, you're doing it to others. It's an equal sort of opportunity. Everybody can do their share. All right? That person drives me nuts. Guess what? Somebody's saying the same thing about you. I promise you somebody's saying it about you, okay? But you think, but I'm so quiet. Maybe that's what drives them nuts. Is that you never say anything, and they never know what you're thinking, and they're never getting involved. And it could be anything, all right? My brother frustrated the life out of me as a kid because all he wanted to do was sit and read. And all the rest of us are trying to have enough people to play something outside, whether it's football or something. We needed people outside. And I'd have to run in and grab them and say, we need you out here. And my brother would do this. He'd look up. As soon as my lips stopped moving, I'm sure he didn't hear a word I said, he would look back down and read. And I'm positive he didn't hear one word. He would hear me, look up, and just wait. Oh, he's done, good. And I'd go over and throw something at him. Of course, we're kids, right? And I'm the older brother, so I kind of yanked him out of it. But still, this can frustrate you. It doesn't have to be somebody who's actively agitating you. It could be that passiveness that agitates you. What you have to do is be aware. Are you aware of what is happening to you and around you? Are you aware of what you are doing and what you're bringing to the table? Okay? Because if you want better relationships, you can't just look at what they're doing. Ask yourself, I wonder if there's a reason, maybe not one that justifies how he's treating you if you're a woman. I wonder if there's a reason why my husband treats me this way. Maybe I'm doing some things. Maybe, I'm not saying it's all your fault, but you might be doing some things. And if you're the other way around, if you're the husband, you think, maybe there might be a reason why my wife is agitated. Maybe I'm doing some things. Not that you're doing all the things, right? It takes two to do these things. I mean, I've had people that come to me and they wanted to only talk about the other person. I said, this didn't happen in a vacuum. I will talk to you about the other person, but I want to talk to you about you and the other person. What part did you have in this? This didn't happen just isolated. This happened with you and that other person. Had a person leave our ministry because all they want to do is talk about their adult children, and they wouldn't let me talk to them about their part in it with their adult children. So they left. Well, I'm not going to blah, blah. I said, listen, I can't help you. If you just want to talk about them, I can't do it. You had a part in this. No, I'm not here for me. I'm here for them. But it's not, you're talking about not just them in their life. You're talking about them in their relation with you. You're not just coming saying, my son or daughter has a problem in their career. Okay, well, that is just about them. Fine, I can talk to them. When you're saying, I'm having a problem with my son, or I'm having a problem with my daughter in a relationship, now I need to talk to both of you. Because everybody has a piece. They all have to own their piece, right? Own it, fix it, then move on. Let it go. Right? 3:45, wow. Okay. Okay, when I said, are you aware of the level of influence, control you're exerting or imposing or having on those around you? I want you to also be hiding that awareness because you may not be doing this consciously. As a matter of fact, I assure you, most of what you're doing you're not aware that you're doing it to anybody. I've had couples break down, one or the other, very emotionally when they realized, oh, I had no idea I was doing that to you. And they'll feel terrible. And they'll profusely apologize. And there'll be a breakthrough. Because a lot of you are just irritating people around you and just have no idea. You are so clueless, you have no idea. Because you're not aware of yourself enough. You're only aware of what everybody else is doing that's irritating you. So you have no conscious awareness that you're doing this. Okay? And that's where we end up with the offense. You bring it to their attention, the person's like, I am not. How could you think of me that way? You think that I do? Well, you do, though. Stop being so sensitive and defensive and own that, yes, it's true and it's you. Go look in the mirror and realize I found the enemy and it's me. I'm the problem. I'm the cause of most of my problems. All right? All right. I think I got just enough time to do this at the end here. So what's the goal? The goal is to have total, consistent freedom to choose how you respond to any and all situations that happen to you or around you. All right? And by to you, I mean in quotes because it's not really happening to you, but it's directed in your direction. All right? That's the goal, to have total and consistent freedom of choice, to recognize that that choice is always there. You can always choose how to react. Number one, then and only then can you only submit yourself, then and only then can you truly submit yourself to someone else, including Yahweh. You want to be a submissive wife? You want to be a man who's submitted to a ministry? You want to be, any kind of submission can only happen once you're in full control. Oh, I want to disciple. You can't do it when you're being controlled by somebody else. How can I disciple you and have influence over you when somebody else already has influence over you? You can't submit to the level of relationship that's necessary to disciple until you are in control. All right? Marriage, nobody should get married till they're in control, but none of us are in control. We're not even making the effort generally to get in control. We're still controlled by so much. Worse than that, almost all of you have either A, been married before, or B, had long relationships before you got married, which already influence you how you feel about relationships over a period of time that are intense, almost like a marriage. I tell the story how I was in my 30s when I met my wife, and I had dated a few people a little bit before my wife, because I was just I didn't want to be single anymore. So I was convinced to go out on 1 or 2 dates, and I never went out with anybody more than once, because almost immediately I would find out that they hated men. Because these were people, look, I was in my 30s. I got married at 35. By then, almost everybody I dated had already had at least one marriage and or at least a few long-term relationships. I hadn't had any of those. And so those marriages or long relationships that might as well have been a marriage that went bad skewed the way they saw all men. I was like, I'm not walking into that buzzsaw. I had some sense. Because some of my friends I was with was like, well, why don't you go on a date? So I went on a date. And I realized that was a bad idea. Okay? And then Yah said, it's time for you to come back and find me again. Okay, so I went back to the place that I knew, which was a split off from Worldwide Church of God, United Church of God, and I met my wife. I said, actually, it was really funny because I called I had a phone number there, and I called the ministry to find out where their location was and everything else. I said, all right, thank you very much. And I said, by the way, do you got any single women there? So they said, yeah, one. I was like, oh, great. The one nobody wanted that's left. Of course, my wife, when I tell the story, says, and then, of course, you were still single too. I was like, see, that's how we do that, though. We don't think of ourselves. I'm thinking, this whole congregation has the one single girl that's left. Okay? Well, there were reasons why she was left. There was reasons why I was still left. The reason being we're supposed to find each other. All right, amen? Oh. Anyway, but just so you see how that can go? All right? So we come with these influences and these influencers, which is why if you counsel for marriage with me, I make the effort, well, I shouldn't say I make the effort, I make you make the effort to understand and know each other better. I want you to know each other's color from a personality point of view. I want you to know each other's love language, so you know how to speak to each other. I want you to know each other's expectations. When you get married, I'll start with the woman. It doesn't matter. I can start with the man. I'll start with the man then, because I will go from that point. That man knows in his head what he thinks husband looks like, and he knows what he thinks wife looks like. So he knows what you should expect from him, and he knows what he's expecting from you. And you know, as the wife knows, this is what I'm offering as a wife. This is what I see a wife as, and this is what I expect a husband to do. Here's the problem. Nobody's had this conversation. So they get married, and they get frustrated because they're not matching. What you think a wife is and what he thinks a wife is doesn't match. What he thinks a husband is and if you're the woman, I'm saying it doesn't always, I'm telling you, it doesn't match. Not always, and not in all areas. So I encourage them to make a list. Sit down and say, this is what I'm offering you as a husband, this is what I expect from you as a wife. And the wife goes, this is what I'm offering you as a wife, and this is what I expect from a husband. Then I tell them to sit down and compare lists with one rule. You can't go, you what? You expect what? But you have to understand, you came to this from all your influencers. And so the way you picture those roles has already been very influenced. And your influencers are not from the same place. You don't have the same influencers, so you have different ideas. And then you get married and you get frustrated. Well, I don't understand why he doesn't do all this. That's what a husband should do. Or I don't understand why she doesn't do all this. That's what a wife should do. And the wife goes, or the husband goes, I'm doing exactly what I expected a husband or a wife. I mean, everybody already has expectations. So what you should do to make it work better is set them yourself. Don't let them come to their own. And that's the way I put together a premarital counseling. So I just gave it to you in a quick nutshell. That's mostly what we do. Excuse me, so that the people can learn. You know, I also make sure they talk about everything that they can talk about. So I do a quick time warping thing where I have them go out to the future 5 years. You're married. What does everyday life look like? Who's doing what? Who's taking out the garbage? Who's filling out the checks to pay the bills? You know, how often do you go out to eat? Do you have kids? Just like, what's life like? And then talk about that together to make sure that you have the same vision. Because I know a couple that got married where the wife thought she was going to have 5 kids. The husband thought he was going to have none. That's not good not to know. Okay? But the expectations. All right? You know, who's paying the bills? Because that's a big deal. Who's going to control that part of it? And it's not that anybody in particular. The wife can certainly do it if the husband has awareness and has the ability to make sure that he has a say in all that. But maybe mechanically he doesn't have the time, or she's better at bookkeeping or something. But still, husbands, do not abdicate that whole authority. Because then you will be missing the things you need to be learning to oversee and protect that family. There's a role there. So you don't have to control it because maybe you're terrible at it. And there are a lot of guys that are just terrible at it. That's fine. Let her do that part, but make sure that you are always in the loop. Because you may have to be the one that says, I don't think we can afford that right now, and probably we shouldn't be doing this right now. Hey, that's fine. We could do that now, and we could do this other thing. You have to be involved in that. But maybe you're the type that was always late on your bills, always lost them in a pile of mess somewhere, and your wife's very organized, so let her do it. Okay? My wife was really good about getting it in just before they were due. That's not an embarrassing thing. A lot of you are that way. I sent them in as soon as they came in. As soon as I got it, paid it, gone. Okay? And so I took over the finances because I felt much more comfortable with it being in, gone, than wondering if it's going to get paid on time. And almost always she does when she did it herself, but that's just me. Okay? So everybody has to do different things with that. So, okay. Now, we have just about run out of time, but I've got a couple of things for you really quickly. Here we go. 2 things. 1, 2, maybe 3 things real quick. One is, I want you to think about, are you being a victim or being the hero? And I don't want to say it in the way it's been used offensively. Oh, you're just playing the victim card. Well, maybe you are. Maybe you like being a victim. You really need to ask yourself that. I mean, be honest about it. Don't trigger because it's been used against you and everything else. Don't go there in your head. I'm not saying you weren't ever a victim. But are you playing it as a card? Are you allowing it to be a disabling, forward-moving thing? Is it controlling you, this victim mentality? Be the hero. Be the one that wins at the end of your life. Okay? Find that victory. And I don't want to sound all Christian about it, but I mean, you want to be the hero. Okay? So here are the tools. I'm going to give you some tools. You ready? Okay, first tool is be present. Having a situational awareness of what is needed or not needed in that moment. That's what I mean by being present. Okay? In every moment, there are things that are appropriate and not appropriate. And that's where you have choice, right? If you're in the moment, present in that moment, you can be aware enough to make the right choices. And you can also be aware of influencers that are trying to help you go in the direction they think you should go. Be present in that moment. I had to learn this a lot because I'm very ADD, very red, always want to be off running and doing projects or doing whatever and organizing things from that point of view, that if you and I are talking, me to focus and just look you in the eyes, I have to work at that. I have to look at you, not think of anything else, don't think about my response, because I will tend to jump in, try to jump to a conclusion quickly, fix the problem, move on. But maybe I didn't hear all the stuff I need to hear before I could do that. Or maybe you just wanted me to listen and you don't want me to fix it at all. By the way, guys, you need to know sometimes the ladies do not need you to fix it. They just want to say it all out loud. You don't need to fix it, right, ladies? Okay? But we won't sit quietly enough to just let them get it out of their system. Ladies, if you don't want them to fix it, please let them know that I just need to get this out of my system. You don't need to fix this. Because some of the guys, especially if they're red, are going to just automatically want to fix it. And so you have to tell us that. Okay, here's another thing for you ladies. Ladies, we don't have omniscient understanding of what's going on in your head. Okay? We are worse than that. We are absolutely clueless. So stop being mad at us because the women always say, well, I shouldn't have to tell you. You do, actually. You do. Okay? We live in the real world, I hope. In the real world, the men, no, they can't read your minds. They're not reading your body language. They're not paying any attention whatsoever. And it's not because they don't love you. Okay? However, most of the men are really good guys, and if you would tell them, they would do anything for you. Just ask. Those are the guys clapping because they know. Please, just ask. I would do anything for you. You're sitting there chattering your teeth and you're cold. Well, then ask for a jacket. There's something broken in the kitchen that the husband might not know. Ask him to fix it. There's garbage needs to be taken out. Well, why doesn't he see it? He doesn't see it. Figure that out. Okay, you're married 25 years. He's never seen it. You think all of a sudden you're still going to be mad at him? Realize he doesn't see it. But if you think about it, every time you asked him to do it, he just did it, didn't he? For the most part, unless you beat him up when you were asking him, what's wrong with you? Don't you see the garbage over there? Blah, blah. Oh, yeah? Well, you take out your own garbage. That's not the way you're going to get it done. Sweetheart, could you do me a favor and take the garbage out? Absolutely, no problem. Boom, done. We don't know what's going on in your head. Okay? We don't know what's going on in our own heads. How are we supposed to know what's going on in your head? But this is the reality. And you got to live in reality. So ladies, stop being so stubbornly offended. Well, I shouldn't have to tell him, but you do. Let me be an influencer right here. This is reality. You do have to tell him. All right? All right. Now, just like I tell you in reality, if you come to me and ask me about something that you want me to do next week, I will tell you right up front, I'm not even going to remember later today. You're going to have to get in touch with me next week about next week. I will not remember. Okay? I just tell people up front, and they think, well, he just doesn't care about me. No, I won't remember anybody. It doesn't matter. My wife asks me, it doesn't matter anybody. I have too much on my plate that I'm dealing with at this very moment, that I'm thinking about. I will not remember. Oh, I'll send you an email. I'm not going to ever see it. Because now, if you do send me an email, contact me by the phone call that says, hey, Rabbi, I sent you an email I need you to look at. Then I will go look for your email. But don't think, I've had people send 3 or 4 emails saying that how mad they are at me because I've ignored their emails. I've ignored everybody's emails. Not on purpose. I get 500 a day. Anybody able to do that? How are you going to handle 500 emails a day? That's at least that. And so, actually, it's gone down a little bit because people stopped emailing me when they realized either A, I was never going to answer, or B, they started finally listening to me when I said stop doing that. It's the least effective way to reach me. Now, sometimes I need something that you need to send that needs to be like an attached document or something that we're talking about, and I say, fine, I want it, we've talked, but I still won't remember. You need to still call me, especially if we talk like during this week, and we're not going to be doing it until next week, I'm not going to get the email. It's going to get buried somewhere. You're going to have to let me know. I love when people say to me, did you see that Facebook post? My wife does this a lot because listen, my feed moves a little quicker than most people's. You got 6,000 friends, or whatever it is, 5,000, it moves. So it's not sitting there on my news feed for very long. Everything just moves. So no, and I don't go on Facebook anyway. All right, here we go. Technique number 2. And we're already after 4 o'clock. I apologize to Sarah Beth. Where is she? Are you here? Okay. I'm sorry, I'm going to run you late just for a second. All right. I want you to do a couple of other things. I'll tell you real quickly how to do them. One, I want you to think about making a 7x7 card. Okay, 7x7 card. It means that like an index card you can have, it has 7 items down the left-hand side, and then the 7 days of the week across the top make columns. little check boxes, okay? An item can be anything that you do every day that you want to stop doing, or anything that you don't do every day that needs to be done every day. These are daily things. So it's not like something that happens once a week. Don't put that on the card. So for example, if you find yourself angry with somebody on a daily basis, you want to make sure you don't get angry, or whatever it is, put down there, did not get angry today. You know, maybe you want to make sure that you're praying every day. Maybe you're not praying like you should, or praying in the morning and praying at night. That's 2 items. You don't have to put 7. It's just hard when you put more than 7. 7 is kind of a number they've realized that's about as much as we can kind of focus on, okay? And so you have your 7. I'm going to give you some more things to do, and you can actually put them on your card, okay? So it's one of those things that you're going to look at in the morning and go, okay, my goal today is to do this, stop doing that, do this, stop doing that. And then at the end of the day, you look at it. If you did what you're supposed to do, you get a check. If you didn't, you don't get a check. The goal is to get a full check across the week for 4 weeks in a row. At any point when you do that, that item can now come off the list. Because theoretically, they've studied this out. It takes about 30 days, which, 28 days, 4 weeks, to develop or break a habit. If you do something, so let's say the first week you might get 5 checks in this, 3 in that, 2 in this, 5 in this, 4 in that. All right, so be encouraged by the 5s and the 4s. You're getting closer. And then look at the 2 or the 3 and say, okay, what's wrong here? Why am I not doing these? And the answer is because you don't have the motivation. So to do what you need to do, you need a strong enough why. Your why is weak. You put it on the list, but you really don't have a strong why it's on the list, why it's important to do it. So what you got to focus on is, what will it cost me if I don't fix this thing? That gets your why going. What will I benefit if I fix it? What's going to be the benefit? What's going to be the cost? Strengthen that in your mind, and you'll be more motivated. Okay, your why is weak. Get a strong why. If I don't do this, it's going to cost me my marriage, cost me my relationship with my mother or my father, my kid, or I'm going to lose my job or something. Something between you and Yahweh. It's going to affect me spiritually. I'm going to end up out of covenant. Whatever it is, strengthen your why. Okay? 2 more things real quick. Second thing, or the next thing is, I call it an affirmation sheet, but really it's a self-description. All right? I want you to picture you 5 years from now, 3 years from now, sometime in the very near future, but not that close, 3, 5 years, well, 3, 4, 5 years away. If you were to really change in all of these psycho-emotional areas, all these areas of your life, what would you be like? Describe yourself. I am confident. I don't live in fear. I have peace. There's no stress in my life. I'm aware of the influences. I'm in control. I have freedom of choice. Write these things out as if they're already true. Don't hopefully say, I hope to be, I want to be. No, I am. We're going forward in time as if it's already true. If you could become the you really would like to be, write that out. I'm happy. Okay? Maybe you're not happy. Okay? Whatever it is. Maybe some of you have problems with motivation. I'm motivated. Because some of you might be lazy and have a struggle getting motivated. Whatever it is. Whatever negative thing, find a way to put it in the positive. Don't say, I'm not lazy. Say, I'm motivated. Find the positive thing. Okay? And so instead of saying, I'm not afraid, just say, I have confidence and I'm trusting and I have belief. It's the opposite of fear. I trust. Maybe you had a problem with your husband or your wife. Say, oh, I trust them now. Or whatever. Just write what it is in your relationships. Describe you in your relationships. You can read that to yourself out loud, privately, twice a day. That's 2 items on your list. What you're doing is reprogramming and re-influencing your mind to the way you want to be. Because the power, it was spoken into your life. Someone told you, you're a loser, you'll never amount to anything, you're this, you're that, and you believed them. Well, guess what? You got to reprogram that. It's going to take a while. The whole imagery of the muddy watered glass, you got to keep putting clean water in until it finally dilutes and clears. Well, you've got a pretty muddied up thing that's been going on for 40, 50, 60 years. It's going to take a lot of reprogramming. Okay, so read that sheet out loud to yourself. You don't need to have anybody else around. The thing is that you're saying it, you're hearing it, you're reading it, multiple inputs. Okay? The more emotionally you can believe it, the better. You're not going to believe a word of it in the beginning. But try even to fake it till you make it. Try to think about how would it feel if I actually was that, and try to say it as if it was true. In other words, try to get into the place where, how would I be feeling reading this if it was all true? How good would it feel? And one day you'll read it if you do this, and you will be that. You will be everything on that paper. All right? Last thing, visualization exercise. I know I'm going a little overtime, but here's the last one. If you are able to visualize, in other words, where you can replay something that's happened in your life in your head, okay? Some people can't, most people can. I don't know about the Reds, but me, I have a real hard time with it, okay? But most people can visualize, close their eyes and picture a scene that played out in their life, especially if it was strong emotion, negative emotion, they can play it back. So what I want you to do is picture, especially if something just happened recently, where you did not respond in a controlled way, the way you want to act. Picture the scene clearly, but this time you react. They still do whatever they did, but you react the way you wish you had. In other words, you're going to practice because you have a triggered response. How did you get the triggered response? By doing it a lot. You practice doing it over and over and over. So now you're going to practice doing it differently. So that next time it happens, you may react the way you practiced in your head. Put that on your 7x7 card. Practice that once a day for like 10 or 15 minutes. And when you practice, don't practice 5 scenes. Practice one scene over and over again. Just keep doing it again, seeing yourself. And each time, hopefully, you see yourself more smoothly reacting. Because it may look really disjointed the first time because you're going to be reacting the way you normally wouldn't react. But the more you practice it, the more it'll come clear in your mind. It'll just happen smooth. They still did whatever they did, but you now have a different response. Okay? So that's all I've got for you for that. So you can put these things on your card. You can practice them. Say, look, if you do the affirmations twice, you do the visualizations twice, that's already 3 items on your card. Okay? And you could do that. And so, again, if you don't get a full week of all in a row, that means next week, you're starting from scratch. You're looking for 4 weeks in a row on any one item. It doesn't matter that you didn't get all 7 of them. You may want to incentivize this. Give yourself a little bit of an incentive. Say, you know what? If I can get 7 checks all week long on any item, I give myself a little special something. Maybe, maybe you like chocolate. You give yourself a little chocolate or something. Maybe you like just whatever, something inexpensive, not a big deal, but enough to motivate you a little bit. And then if you ever get 4 weeks in a row, maybe give yourself a little bit something more special to like look forward to. Hey, if I can get 4 weeks in a row, all perfect, then give yourself a little incentive, something like a little prize for that. Okay? Was that good? Was that okay? All right. Go and find victory. Amen. Be up to the challenge. You already turned it off. Dance class is going to start here in just a minute up here in the front. And those of you waiting for counseling, I'll be right in the back.